Good evening, morning, whatever time zone you were in. How goes it for y'all? We're back at it. It's been a few weeks since I've done live stream besides last Wednesday or whatever. But that's because Baldur's Gate. It's just too fun. It's too fun. I already beat Baldur's Gate twice and I started the third run. Forgot to save for a while though, and I died, and then made me like go back like an hour in progress, and I was like, fuck this shit. And so now I'm kind of taking a little break from Baldur's Gate because of that. But besides the point, Baldur's Gate is amazing. I'm still obsessed with it because Dungeons and Dragons. But yeah, still doing activism on Wednesdays and talking to people about ethics in my free time and posting things on Facebook and shit and Snapchat. Talking to people while I'm Uber driving about ethics every once in a while. The usual. Because it never stops the ethical commitment to being a good person. A better person than y'all, if I can. My goal is to be the best person. Better than Buddha, even. Probably already am. Mm-mm-mm. Guacamole, my dude. Beans, guacamole, some crunchy chips. Mm-mm-mm. A little tomato. Good stuff. The Fiesta burrito with any dairy. Dairy is scary. It's a moral scary thing. My friend Sam, he has a dairy allergy. It's just scary in general. Shit will kill him. It's almost a good thing because no moral systems whatsoever. So he'd be here harassing cow titties if it were up to him. So almost a good thing he has a dairy allergy. Probably is. Yeah, there's nothing new. Taco. But yeah, life is a cruel bitch, though. You start flirting people and they start to flirt back and you kind of get into it with them. And then they're like, good night. And you're there like, good night. We'll talk tomorrow. And then they just don't talk to you the next day. And it's just like, gee, dizzle. You're just busy? Apparently busy enough to not converse with someone you think is attractive. So I guess not that attractive. She spent like fucking like 4 hours talking to me basically nonstop. It's kind of like, dang, that she's in the DMs of like a bunch of folks all at the same time, and I'm just that little of value when it comes down to it. Or women just toss people away like nothing, which is probably the second and a mix of the first, because they do be like that when they're attractive. She was damn fine looking. I mean, I didn't delete her or anything, so it's not like I'm saying this in the past, isn't like it's like no longer having a conversation. Quite likely won't have a conversation, but I mean, whatever. She might get back to me. Who knows? Point is, the inconsistency and lack of dedication to a conversation when she says apparently it's literally like a app designed for people wanting to hook up, and she's like, I want to hook up and stuff. I want to get to know you. Okay, well, so if you want to get to know me, you're not doing a very fucking good job. Then again, I'm being an honest motherfucker for the most part. Not being too revealing, but I'm being fairly honest. So if she asks questions, I will be honest with the answers. And it's just kind of like, maybe I chased her off. Yo, you know how it is. Yo, perpetual pleasures. The him he just bopping here exactly as I'm saying. Yeah, I'm being straightforward with this chick, and you're just probably like, Brant, why you always do this to yourself? And I'm like, hey oh man, just help you. Hey, okay, so I'm talking to this girl. She's really fine. Like, damn, she's fine. And basically, she seems like a pretty straightforward blast. So I'm being straightforward for her. But when it comes to like questions that are involving, yeah, I'm gonna tell you the name of the app. It's called like fucking like classic elaborations. Yeah, basically. I wasn't elaborating too hard. I was a little bit, but not too crazy. The app's called Hickey. It's a hookup app, basically. But this person basically wants to be friends with benefits, and so I'm like, okay, cool. But she wants to get to know me. She wants to basically be friends before she has like the benefits, and she wants to get to know me before we hang out in person. Because I was trying to set up the date thing right away, like you suggest, but she like is like not comfortable with that, and she wants to get to know me online first. So I'm like, strategically, this is not going to work out very well with my personality. But you're better off doing doing something than nothing. So I'm just letting her get to know me. But that's not exactly going to be a good thing, I'm guessing. And given how she hasn't responded to me saying hello today, I don't know. I probably fucked up somewhere along the line. But she talked to me for like literally 4 hours straight yesterday. So like, who knows? She talked to me for like 4 hours straight and not really many interruptions at all. Or a control freak or both. No, she's definitely a control freak. She seemed rather. I was talking about her ex a little bit and like trying to get into like why the relationship didn't work out, just like kind of get to see like who she is and what her priorities are in a relationship. And she seemed rather controlling. I'm not going to tell her that, but she definitely seemed rather controlling. Um, hey, she wants to be dominant, she can be dominant in the bedroom, but I'm not gonna allow her to be that controlling. She can have the illusion of control, but can you really control me? No, no one can control me. The only thing controlling me is the law. The law and social dynamics that make it so it's easier to function. And I guess moral codes that I follow. Yep, control freak. Yeah, she's a control freak. So I'm guessing she wants to have the reins here and grab the balls and be like, I'll talk to you when you want to talk, when I want to talk to you. And I'm just like, that kind of sucks, but okay. I don't know, man. Either way, women being women, it's just a stressful thing. It's just it kills the mood. Oh, the link for you to hop on. Yeah, I can do that. Uh, oop, here we go. It does mean drama, but I'd rather take. Okay, here, family. I'm gonna just show you what this last looks like. Covering up her name, but she's pretty fine. Like, she's kind of a baddie. But when it comes down to it, she may be a baddie, but goddamn, is she really fucking annoying to talk to. So yeah, I mean, she's not annoying to talk to when it comes down to it. Like, she is entertaining to talk to in a way, but annoying because it's going nowhere, and she gives off mixed messages, and mixed messages don't jive well with me. I'm very blunt, and so I'm either very blunt or I kind of beat around the bush to like give like feminines, like I work with feminine signaling, like, ooh, here's my little signal thing, and they don't really reciprocate usually. So usually because there's low attraction, as you would say. Um, how do you do?
Hey, what's up, dude?
Hey, not too much. Just been playing Baldur's Gate, which is a Dungeons and Dragons video game. Basically, been doing that like non-stop for the last 2 weeks, which is why you haven't seen me been streaming at all.
Classic.
But I beat it twice already, so
Awesome, man.
I'm back at streaming again. How's life going for you?
Excellent as ever, brother. Excellent as ever.
Hell yeah.
About you, brother?
Mm, pretty good. I enjoy Baldur's Gate, and when it comes down to it, if I'm enjoying something, I pretty much can kind of tune out to reality pretty easily.
There
The
you go.
pain of the world. So the last 2 weeks have been pretty good, but
Excellent.
yesterday was like kind of like a height moment where I was just like talking with this woman, and I was just bopping, and I was just like, hey, this is like a pretty great time. And then she just didn't talk to me at all today, and it was just kind of like height killer. So I've just been a little bit depressed today, but at the same time, who gives a damn? Life is ups and downs. It's just how it
Sure.
be.
Well, what I would say in situations like that, as long as you got plenty of other women you're interacting with that, you know, you're not talking to for 4 hours at a time that like you and show interest, there you go. As long as you can have stuff you can bounce back on if that falls apart, that's the way to go. But yeah, 4 hours,
Hey,
that's a control freak chick. She's not very highly attracted. She's mostly a control freak. I mean, with chicks like that, yeah, you might get sex in there. Might happen, but it'll be so bogged down with so much fucking drama and emotionality and bullshit that it's usually not even worth it in those cases because the only women
yep.
who do that stuff are control freaks. Most women, they will not have anything romantic interest wise left in you after a 4 hour conversation.
I'm gonna tell
Ever.
you something that you're gonna be like, whoa, damn, I didn't expect this. So I have a childhood friend. Knew them my whole entire life. Been attracted to them probably since like sophomore year of high school. Been friend zoned with them for like the longest time, basically, like years. I've always kind of been like shooting tiny little shots here in the dark, like pew pew pew, little laser rifles, And then I just like, and then not too long ago, I kind of did a Death Star blast, like just blew up a planet, and she was like, "Damn, son, I appreciate that. That was some sparkly shit right there." And when it comes down to it, I shot another major shot last time I hung out with them, and them meaning like multiple people because she's in a relationship, and I basically was just like, "Yo, how about a threesome, y'all?" And let's just say well, she said yes. He was like kind of mixed emotions, but basically she's completely down to like be doming me. So basically, hey, I'm getting pegged. Moral of the story is I'm getting pegged, baby.
There you
So
go.
when it comes down to it, like I didn't expect that, but when it comes down to it, yeah, sometimes you can break up those dynamics. It just takes a long time and like
What'd you do correct that got her to be romantically turned on by you, bro?
I don't know. I guess I'm just attractive in general and constantly have a little bit of a flirty energy here and there. But I mean, I guess I kind of the way I went about it was just like mentioning that, like, oh, like I have an OnlyFans. Like she would be really great in OnlyFans. Blah blah blah. You know, we should collaborate. And then she's like, oh yeah, just for the collaboration. You know, and I'm like, yeah, of course, just for the collaboration. And I gave her a link, and I'm like. And then basically, I was just like, "Ah, don't worry, Devin. You can peg me too if you want." And he's just like stuff like that. So it was just like a little bit of like flirty fun time. And then later, I just established like, no, this is serious though. But like what's going on? So
Awesome,
yeah,
man.
I mean,
Well, are you able to peg her as well, like for real, or is she just saying?
no, it's just a dominant thing. She's asexual, so she's mainly just doing it because she likes like sexual energy and stuff like that. But
Oh, okay, I see how it goes. Okay.
hey, I would love to be on top of it when it comes down to it. I'll take what I can get. You know,
Well,
I'm
hey,
into pegging, so
you enjoy it. Hey, the more the merrier. There you go. Classic, man. Classic.
so so yeah, it's been I guess a overall good week, though some disappointing things as always, and the disappointing things are always like more visceral than the pleasant things in my opinion. I don't know why that is, but life is just that way.
That tends to be how reality goes most of the time, doesn't it?
Pretty much.
Yeah, I've worked on some techniques to break that pattern to make sure that doesn't go that way in most situations I run into, where the pleasant stuff like floods my obsessiveness and then the disasters just like brush by the wayside. I've gotten pretty good at it over the years. Pretty
Yeah,
good
for
at it.
me it's like the complete opposite. It's just like girl I'm attracted to seems to be attracted to me, decides not to talk to me for whatever reason. Completely just like energy levels, just like it's just like, damn, people just waste my time. Do they just do it to get like ego gratification? Just am I just a feeding tool to these people? Like, damn, I'm just a tool.
Well, the
And
other day I
then
had a
other times it's just like a good thing happens, and it's just like I feel good for like a couple seconds, and that's just nothing. It's just like but in the moment it's like great, and then like when I come and reminiscent on it and be like, yeah, this happened to me, guys, yo, it's like a little bit of an ego boost thing, you know. But like other than that, it's just like I don't feel like great. Like literally, it's just like damn, girl, then literally like most attracted to like throughout my entire life, like childhood friend that I've wanted to constantly bang, and finally getting an opportunity, and it's just like I feel good, I guess. That's cool. it's, like, it's like I don't know
That's
what's
funny,
wrong
man.
with my brain, bro.
Well, I had a 4 hour plus conversation with Mark Antinatalist the other day. That was really good.
Oh fuck yeah.
Yeah, that was a good one. But yeah, that's the thing I've noticed with like with the females I'm dating, I haven't had a single really prolonged phone conversation at all with either of them. Both of them are completely in love with me and yeah, very attracted to me and emphasizing it ever more as time goes on. But
Hmm.
that's why I always say it's like it's so, especially if there's a chick you're like really, really highly attracted to that you specifically want to be pegging, that you want to peg. In that case, um, yeah, long conversations are one of the fastest destroyers of a woman's romantic attraction. It's really dumb that that's the case, but it is that way. It's just like long, prolonged texting back and forth, which I actually enjoy. Long, prolonged text back and forth, but it doesn't work for a female who's romantically turned on. Now, what's interesting though is females who are of a very quirky, unique psychology, who are really good quality friends with benefits material specifically, and who acknowledge that you can in those cases have prolonged conversations, but even then it's still better to periodically break it up and have interspersed dynamics back and forth versus anything prolonged. because it's really easy for females to lose romantic attraction, really easy for them to lose arousal and all sorts of stuff with anything prolonged, basically. So
No, that definitely makes sense. Yeah.
which is
Definitely.
really it's really sucky because I really enjoy long text conversations and long phone conversations
Yeah,
personally.
me too,
But
man.
it's like, man, it'd be nice if I could have those and have romantic attraction actually increase instead of dwindle afterwards. That'd be cool. But it just doesn't work that way in females' brains, Quite the opposite.
Hmm. I wonder why that is. Like, because for males, I mean, it seems to be the opposite of that. Like, you just kind of
Yeah,
long
because it
after more.
destroys, for females, it destroys the mystery. They're obsessed with some degree of mystery all the time going on. So the more you talk, the less mystery there is. The more you reveal, the less they have to wonder about. It's in fact, recently, one of the ladies I was with, she was specifically mentioning, are you thinking about other girls, this and that? Why is it that you don't, call or text me unless I call or text you? But what's interesting, what the translation is, I would love it if you called or texted me more, but her attraction itself is extremely, incredibly high. Very fixated, very attached. A lot of calling and texting me, so on and so forth. So you always look at the actions, not the words. When a female says that, because I had periodically throughout the year called or texted her a small handful of times first before she did me, but overwhelmingly it was her. So I specified exactly why. Same things I talked to you about, and
Hmm.
uh, same things I talk about publicly. Sure enough, she was super happy after my response, and then emphasizing that I really love when she calls and texts me. And as long as she shows that she deeply appreciates whenever I call and text first, she shows that that means a lot to her, then I definitely will. I'll be happy to, you know? So that's what you want to do is you always want to encourage her to show you how much that means to her every time you do it. And then if that happens, then you will, basically. That's where you want to be. So you specify when you show as long as you show me that you really deeply want that and like it when I do that, when I do, then I'm happy to call and text more. And boom, there you go. That's like the best way to get women to actually actively respond to it because they know that you're not just going to call or text if they're not going to value it, if they're going to take it for granted or cheaply, if they're going to be emphasizing how much they love you and care for you and want to have you bang them, all day and night, cuddle up with them and stuff. If they're going to be doing that in response to your text and stuff, telling you how much they love you and care about you, that is what you will solidify as what's going to lead you to call and text more, right? If that doesn't happen, you just won't. It's really that simple.
Hmm.
And that actually really helps increase women's attraction very high. So yeah, the women I'm with, it's very consistent, very much so. Falling ever more in love with me, and they emphasize this from their end. And yeah, it's great because when women wonder and they're curious if you're more attracted to other women, they're like on the absolute top of their A game. Like when they know you, number one, have very easily accessible options with other women, they got to be on top of their A game, and that means that they put a lot of stake into having you as their dating partner or boyfriend or romantic partner because they don't want to lose you. They want to make sure they keep you and maintain you. And so that's how the female energy operates. They want to make sure that they keep turning you on and attracting you and all that type of stuff. And it's really simple. It's literally just responding positively to everything they do that's positive, that you approve of, that they say to you, and just not really responding. Or if anything ever negative is said to you, you just call that out or just don't respond to it. Emphasize I'll only respond to positive, encouraging things, and just leave it at that. Pretty simple, very simple formula, and works like a charm. Any woman who's emotionally healthy, in terms of genuinely feeling affection for you, it works like a charm on. It encourages her to behave more in the positive direction. Any woman who's not an emotional basket case or a nightmare nut job. And what it does is it sifts out women who are control freaks, nightmare nut jobs, jaded women, all this other type of stuff who want to just control you and who demand more communication and all this type of stuff. It sifts them out so you don't have to waste time with them. And it's a great thing. So the problem is what happens is men always end up getting plopped with women who are those types, control freaks, jaded chicks, all all that crap because they keep agreeing to talk too much or text too much or whatever, crossing their fingers hoping for a different result, and then they wonder why they're always stuck with abusive women, control freaks, nut jobs, mental cases. Well, it's because those are the only types of women that respond to those types of things. Healthy women don't. As weird as annoying it is, the women who respond positively and who will treat you better are women who aren't going to be really into prolonged talks over the phone or prolonged text via text. That's literally only control freak women who are obsessed with that and fixated on that. I've dated multiple of them. So the ones who were control freaks, that's one of the reasons you actually don't text back too much or call back too much, because you want to see if you're dealing with a control freak. That's actually what you're looking for. So it's like you can't really know that unless you let her display her control tendencies. So one chick I dated, she had a huge ass. I was obsessed with her butt, but everything else about her I wasn't really all that attracted to. Yeah, great ass, everything there, but the rest of her, yeah, just she was a control freak. She was just all sorts of these things, leeching money. It's just not a good situation overall. And I was like, yeah, it's just not worth it. It's not worth being with this chick to thunk her booty. It's just not worth it. I need to just shift into something else. It was just too much of a headache outside of that. So that was one case. Another case was a chick when I first met her on her first date. All she did was go on just this huge rant over, like, she just constantly spewed all this negativity. That was it. It's like I couldn't, and it was just like an interesting experiment. I'm just going to sit here and see, just for my amusement, if I can actually get her to talk about something positive or actually smile or anything. It's like, I kid you not, no matter what I did, I couldn't get this chick to genuinely smile or like display actual happiness about anything. It didn't matter like what I said.
She sounds like a keeper.
I was like, yeah, this is just fucking nightmare. So
I don't know, man. She sounds like a goth queen to me, but
no. But the thing was, there's a difference between goth chick who is like dark and aware of reality, but like this expresses positivity towards you. Okay, that's a different thing.
A bitch.
But yeah, but if she's just a bitch, period, including to you, and just negative, that's it. That's nightmarish. That's not what you want. Okay.
No, that's fair. Yeah, I suppose so.
That's what this chick was basically. It's like it was almost like even with me, she was holding herself back from being negative about all these little nitpicky. It was just, I was like, okay, this chick is a ball of fucking drama, like personified. I don't want to be near this chick with a 20-foot fucking pole. So yeah, I shifted out of that. But when I looked at her face, she initially looked attractive and cute to me, and she had some curvature to her, but it was like, personality wise, it was just a fucking nightmare. So I was like, yeah, it's not worth it, man. You know, I know that booty can be alluring, but nah, it ain't fucking worth it when it comes to that shit, man. Hey, that's the thing. A lot of men, they learn these techniques and stuff, but what ends up happening is, they jump into like the first thing that comes along. So that once they see things starting to work, they jump in with a chick who has a bad attitude, and so it's like, I can land the female, but they don't really take enough time to ensure that the female they land is a good quality one. So they're thinking, cool, I landed the female.
I'm just trying to land a female at this point. It's been like 8 years since I've like dated somebody like officially, and like it's just like I'm honestly just looking to have a test run of some sort at this point. You know, even if it's a bad test run, I'm just looking for a test run.
Well, because you end up just getting scraps otherwise. I mean, like I've dated tons of different women and not had intercourse with most of them because there was something that was off and it just didn't click or whatever. But it was just.
I mean, were you pursuing intercourse, or was it like more like you stopped having desire for them because something was off?
Well, yeah, I was pursuing intercourse if I hit it off with them well enough and if I jived enough. But my stance basically is that I'm already like very satisfied with my fleshlight and my like masturbation if I'm not with my girlfriends already, making love to them. So it's like I've got women who already treat me really well, number one. Number two, I've got masturbation if they're not around. So I don't really need an additional female if things don't actually jive. It doesn't really make logistical sense. I mean,
I have a question, a really weird one.
Doesn't make a whole lot of sense. What's that?
My brother claims that fleshlights are better than women in terms of like feeling. Is that true? He's like, Brand, he's like, you have like so much care about like women and stuff like that, and like your like loneliness. And I'm like, I don't really, but if you say so, Colin. He's like, you do, and I'm like, okay. I'm like, he's like, but if you have a fleshlight, bro, it doesn't go away because sex, nothing compared to fleshlight. It's like, and I'm like, if you say so. I'm like,
I
is
would
that
say I would say a modified anal fleshlight. Yes, that's exactly what I have. But here's the thing. Yes, in certain phases, but not in every case. I would say, let me put it this way: compared to vaginal with a female physically, a modified anal fleshlight absolutely, definitely feels better. Giving a woman anal though, directly, physically, feels can actually feel significantly better than a fleshlight, or at least as good. But it can actually feel much better depending on how much intensity is there and how much emotionality is surging and hormones are surging and everything else. And that's what adds to the pleasure of it, that you're the one penetrating and then she's experiencing, you're stretching her open and stuff. That's the other arousal factor you don't really get exactly the same degree with a fleshlight, but in terms of physical sensation by itself, if you use water-based lube and keep adding water from the top, definitely a modified anal fleshlight can definitely be much more pleasurable. What I do is I have one that's cut. I have the base part, but I have the top cut off of it to where when it sticks in, it's just like empty room around it. So it's just the entrance itself. That's like the stimulating part back and forth. What that does is it increases the lubrication and movement, but it ensures that when your penis is through it, it's not being rubbed continually. So you actually have
less chafing and stuff?
yeah, it's less wearing on your penis, basically, less chafing. It's more like massaging, and it feels a lot better. At least because I had it originally, I tested it with they have the tube, but the entrance feels really good, but the rest of the tube has like this. It's like the whole thing is like enclosed, so it doesn't really have exactly the same sensation of an actual anus or an actual vagina, but it kind of does. But I noticed it actually feels significantly better with that top part cut off and just not there. Actually,
So anal is better than vaginal sex. Does
by
that
far,
mean?
in
Does
my
that
opinion,
by far? Does that mean that it's potentially not gay to fuck femboys?
it's not. I don't think it
Fuck
is.
yeah, amen. That's what I've been seeing this for years. It's statistically also 20%, 20 to 30% stronger in orgasm to have a prostate stimulated orgasm. So I'm just saying, like, having sex with femboy, either position, it's just the straightest thing you can do. Better,
Oh yeah,
straighter than fucking a woman,
can
100%.
be for
Plus, you're
sure.
dominating another man, and that's just has like an extra level of dom factor. So it's truly just like the most straight thing you can do is fuck a femboy.
There you go.
Officially stated on this channel. That's the next debate. Anybody that wants it's if you want to come at me with ethics first, you have to come at me about femboys. So
Yeah, me and vampiric nyctophiliac are really into that. He's especially into that whole thing. I'm open to it. I'm cool with it. I don't actually consider them men at all either. I mean, if they're engaging in the dynamic of it and they're totally actually feminine behavior, and that's legit how they are. Yeah, I consider them females. Basically, I'm gynosexual. Pretty much mostly straight, but open to certain cases of like full on femininity in biological men. Um, yeah, I have no issues with it. But Trent, he's like really into that stuff. I'm like, cool. That's like his big thing. And he also talks about the factors of like emotionality, the ability to talk to those types more at length because they understand male psychology, where they're not turned off by prolonged discussions and stuff like bio women are. So there's a lot of advantages there too. It's not you have a lot more leeway to be able to have more deep conversations prolonged without it actually turning the other person off. So that's cool too, actually.
hmm.
And I think that's
Talking about a trans woman right now, and I don't know, we're having a date plan for Tuesday actually,
cool.
but I'm not entirely sure. She doesn't really seem very interested, but I feel like that's because she's interested in having a relationship, and I was originally coming at her looking for a hookup. So I mean, I think she was originally kind of turned off by that, like, and like, oh.
Oh.
But
Well, here's what I do. I always
I'm trying to repair it. It just took like a month, but I think I've achieved
Well,
getting
this is
a
the
date.
thing. It's important never to say for a hookup because I always just go for the dating period, no matter what. Because me, no matter what, I want to get to know who somebody is to some extent before I just hop in the sack with them. I mean, like, I
Oh,
want
I
to.
have no concern about that. Yeah, it's just like, are you STD free? It's like, cool.
Yeah, I just want to have some basis on that personally, because uh, once again, like I said, the fleshlight thing, and also the I'm satisfied anyway sort of a thing mostly. So I don't really. Mostly for me, it's just I get this surge of satisfaction and sensation of being romantically arousing to multiple different women, basically. The source of multiple different women being turned on by me and stuff turns me on. So that's pretty much what drives me a lot. I don't know. At some point, I might try out the hookup thing. I just, for whatever reason, the most of the women I came across within the hookup culture stuff, I just didn't find them very attractive. For whatever reason, it was like they weren't my type. They didn't have the look that I was after. There was some personality quirk. It's just I don't know what it was. It just never seemed to click for some reason. But
My issue is just dodging around the prostitutes, man. Like, it's like every once in a while you find like one's actually like looking for just genuine like having a good time. They wanna get off basically just like you do. But most of the time it's just like you're searching and it's like people are like, yeah, like they seem like they're just trying to get off, and then you have a conversation with them and you're like go through it for like a half an hour, and then all of a sudden it's just like, yeah, we should meet up, and it's like cool. And then also like I just do 35 in advance, and I'm like, what the fuck? So it's like, that's one of the issues with hookup culture is like it's just a lot of wasting your fucking time. So
oh
honestly, if you're good at dating and just that dynamic, then you're probably better off sticking to it if you get sex out of it in the end. So
yeah, and I get sex with the chicks that I'm most attracted to anyway. So that's basically why I stick with it. Basically, I don't really have a need to do hookup culture. That's more or less what it is. And on top of that, it's far lower risk of disease and shit like that. Fuck, if STDs weren't a factor at all, I'd probably be doing hookup culture all the time. It's just because they are a marginal factor. It's usually not worth it for me in those cases. But I don't know. I'm more into the idea of doing the cuckold thing. I just need to find the right couple that I'm for sure are STD free and stuff like that. But we'll see how that goes.
there's a lot of cuckold. Like actually, I mean, do you go on Reddit at all?
I do off and on. I actually haven't had it on my phone for a while, but I'll probably download it at some point again.
If I had to recommend any place to potentially find like hookups and stuff like that, it would be Reddit. I mean, honestly, when it comes down to it, I mean, I'm not the women I'm talking to right now are not. I mean, one of them is on Reddit, but she doesn't really respond. But when it comes down to it, like, yeah, Reddit, bunch of horny motherfuckers, and there's whole entire subreddits dedicated just to people that are like cuckolds for like your local area. You just need to type in like whatever your city you're in or like district you're in or whatever. Like I'm Brown County and like Fox Valley, so it's like the district of Brown County and the I don't know what this is called, something of Fox Valley. So it's like there's like entire subreddits for Brown County, entire subreddits for Fox Valley, entire subreddits for Green Bay, entire subreddits for Wisconsin alone. So it's like if you just type in your state or like your city and stuff like that, and then like what you're into and what you're looking for, like hookup or like cuckold or something like that, like you might be able to find entire subreddits dedicated to just like looking for people like that. Like if you type in like milfs of or like some of that of like that, you might be able to find like entire pages of like single moms and like cuckolds and stuff like that looking to
That's awesome, man.
so
I'll definitely check that out. I need to re-download that sucker.
it is the way. It is the way. Plus, it's free, so that's one of the big perks of Reddit is like there's it's entire subreddits hosted and it's free. So you're gonna have to
That's
still
pretty
dodge
awesome.
around. You're gonna have to still dodge around like people who are trying to sell you stuff, but
Right, fake accounts, bots, and all that crap and stuff. Yeah,
basically, they
that
start
makes
trying to immediately like are like add me on Snap. It's like 90% chance that they're a sex bot, but
sense. Probably. Yeah,
it's
that's
the
very
risk
true.
to
Well, So far, so good. Multiple women that love me very deep and that I have intimacy with very deep. Feels good. Satisfying.
Really?
Yep.
So Gary.
Oh man, I was like, God, I was, ever since I started my channel, I was eventually going to get around to talking about his stuff at some point. I mainly just wanted to build up an audience first and get all of my stuff up before I started doing that because I knew it would just kind of slow down subscriber count going up if I did it right off the bat.
No, that's fair.
But now things are more established. I got my stuff out, a lot of other things I wanted to say first. I think now is pretty soon at some point I'll start calling it out. I really do enjoy that channel where it's Ephilism with the crossover. And obviously, I know you don't agree with a
I
lot of stuff.
I don't agree with anything. I think he's just I think he basically just uses like whatever it's like little flash points and stuff like that, little blippets, little snap points, to just be like, oh look what he said here, without the context of it being a consequentialist argument and stuff like that.
Well,
Like,
yeah, I understand. So obviously, the reason I like him and you don't is for obvious reasons. We've talked about that so many times over. But basically, with the specific point, independent of that guy's stuff, the point that I was glad that was being brought up that really I just thought was so bizarre. I was like, what? Why does he keep bringing this up over and over again? Why does he keep elaborating on this and mentioning this specifically repeatedly in multiple different pieces of content about the CP thing and
yeah,
how it's like the only reason a person would do that or would feel an urge to do that or a need to do that would be because they themselves have some interest in that and maintaining their ability to keep doing it or something like that. I mean, otherwise you wouldn't even feel the urge to mention that or specify that because it's unnecessary and it's really fucked up. It's like, why the hell would you want that stuff still available to people? That it doesn't make any rational sense. It's like, so that was one of the major things that turned me off from a lot of Mendham's ranty nature aspects of what he was doing. Obviously, certain points he brings up in his videos regarding antinatalist stuff, I agree with and makes a lot of sense. And he has a lot of useful points. But when he goes on those tangents, I guess, I don't know if it's true or not, but somebody accused him of having Asperger's syndrome. I don't know if that's actually accurate or if he was diagnosed with it. But if that is the case, he's definitely got something else along with that going on, more than likely. But yeah, it's just weird shit, man. I mean,
no, yeah. When it comes to the whole CP thing and the anti-Semitism, that stuff is a little bit sketch, definitely beyond like it's. But when it comes down to it, it has nothing to do with ethilism, really. It's just kind of like random shit that he's kind of gone on tangents on. He's just like, oh, consequentially speaking, I disagree with him because supply and demand reasons, the suffering would be perpetuated. So it's like CP is obviously a bad thing that shouldn't be and should be removed off of any markets whenever the opportunity arises. Usually get rid of it.
right.
But so I don't know what the fuck he was thinking when he said that. But and I basically won't defend it. I'll call it out as like foolish nonsense. And yeah, he probably, I don't know. I'm not going to make accusations about what he has for desires or urges or whatever. But so long as he's not actually causing harm, the way I look at it is just like, you can have whatever desires you have, and as long as you don't act on them. I mean, I literally have the desire to hack people's heads off, and like throat fuck their the corpse. So it's like, when it comes down to it, like, so long as I'm not doing that, and I have those desires, I can't really judge someone that has horrible desires that they won't act on. It would just be hypocritical of me. So it's
Yeah.
like,
Well, I think the main issue is just him saying the should part. I think should, therefore that stuff's the issue.
yeah,
That's the stuff that is actually causing harm, not the whatever his desires may be part. It's like if you were to say, yeah, I think we should be able to just hack people's heads off when we feel like it. That would be an issue. That would be causing harm because it's promoting a narrative of yes, should be able to hack heads off. Like,
yeah, that's true.
you're not actually doing that. So that's the difference, basically. There's a difference between I want to and therefore we should be able to. It's two different things. But
Yeah, when it comes to the whole CP thing, that's my major disagreement with him. The anti-Semitism thing, like, He's
Well,
just
part of the problem is he
wrong.
uses a three-letter word. Like if he would just
Jew, yeah.
separate out the narrative, talk about the religious issues, talk about the historical issues, and if he would leave out the scoffing at the concentration camp factor part of it the way he does, his narrative is fine if he leaves out that part. The problem is he goes on these tangent narratives about
He needs to
scoffing at
watch
that
the
part.
movie Conspiracy, because honestly, the concentration camp thing was a shit show. People don't know about this, but I do, like, because I watched the movie. There was a whole conference that lasted exactly an hour and 30 minutes long, basically, that decided the entire fate of all the Jews. And
Oh, I'll want to check that out to see what that contains.
it's amazing. It has a like, brilliant quote that I love, but it's a Nazi saying it, so I'm not gonna say. But
Well, the thing is,
uh,
it's like I was talking about that many years back, and looking into, because I was seeing all these different pieces where people were showing, well, they couldn't have, and this there's actually guys who were Yahudim ethnically and religiously, it seems like maybe, that were saying themselves that the gas chambers couldn't have been used in this way to this degree, etc. Now, when I was looking at that, I was like, okay, that part might make sense scientifically. And then they were talking about how piles of bodies weren't burned, but that's completely separate from. They weren't claiming that concentration camps didn't exist or that they weren't mistreated at all. That wasn't part of the claim, from what I could tell. It was just they were debating whether the actual specific burning part of bodies happened. They're trying to show that part was scientifically impossible. So, like, what really happened? There was an acknowledgement that people were killed and shot if they didn't keep working or if they didn't keep doing their stuff or whatever, and that the gas chambers were used, but for sterilizing clothing and stuff. But that narrative, I'll have to re-look into all of that shit. But the problem was, what I noticed was
no, I
that
think that's definitely a conspiracy, because the movie Conspiracy is like a literal transcript from The Room where they talk about like enacting genocide basically under like very kosher words. They don't use the word genocide basically, and well, they use genocide once or twice when a couple of people in the room get angry and start calling people out for like basically saying that like tiptoeing around the word genocide.
yeah,
But
well,
like they basically, the movie goes like they're just talking about like what do we do with all these Jews, like we want to get rid of them from Europe essentially.
yeah, well, that
And
was obvious. Everybody knows that was the case. That's why when people try to go in, what I'm trying to say is usually when somebody tries to go into and analyze, okay, what actually happened, was it used this way or that way, usually connected to that, they connect it to this narrative of, oh, therefore the Jews are the ones scheming and conniving, therefore the Nazis weren't that bad, blah 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 blah. But what
oh
I
yeah,
ran
no,
into was I never claimed either of those things. That wasn't my stance. What I was talking about was, does the science show that these things are actually scientifically possible? That's what I'm looking at. And what's interesting is the doing that while also calling out Judaism, the religion, and the problems within it as part of the reason why people throughout Germany were angry and furious and everything else, and were hyped via conspiracies and stuff, which is known. It's like I was mentioning to people that people get tunnel visioned in on the fact that, okay, this happened, this is horrific. Duh, of course it is. Like, nobody debates that with basic sense. But the issue is, it's important to understand why the people got furious and hyped and flipped out and emotionally surged and bought into this conspiracy the way they did. How was that possible to happen? Oh, okay, it makes sense how that happened historically. But the problem is you can't even discuss the goddamn topic at all without people assuming, wrongly, number one, that you're anti Semitic of an ethnic group. Number two, without accusing you of being some sort of neo-Nazi nut job. Number three, they're automatically assuming you're denying the killing of large numbers of people. Like they're assuming you're denying these three things, denying that, and that you're promoting some racist narrative, which is not the case at all. And I've seen this happen to me and many other different people who have even tried to talk about this. And it's like, okay, there's something really off about this, like where you're not even allowed to discuss or get to the bottom of, okay, let's find out, for the benefit of the ones who actually suffered horribly, what really fucking happened, so we can understand it accurately beyond hype, either way, beyond hype, mass mainstream hype train stuff, or non-mainstream hype train conspiracy bullshit. Let's figure out what actually went on as best as we can, because I care about what really fucking happened. But it's just like you have, and then you have these people just cascade on you and then flip out, and then it's like they have this like permanent off-put sensation towards you like the rest of their existence. I had so many fucking people cut me off and not talk to me again just for even discussing these goddamn things. So that was really annoying because they didn't take the time to actually talk to me, to actually understand what I was saying, or to even have conversations about any of it. It was just like, okay, your psychology has to be, oh my God, why does everybody hate the Jews so bad ethnically? Oh my God, they're all anti-Semitic. Why? Why? How dare you question anything about the official narrative? What are you trying to? It's like, okay, can you just like sit down and take a deep breath for a second and listen to what's actually being said instead of assuming what you think I'm going to say, please? That's what really pissed me off about the whole thing. And like in my pieces of content where I talk about it, where I use the term Yahudim separated from Judaism, it's essential. You have to do that because you can't fucking use the 3-letter word. So when I went down that rabbit hole, and I made sure to not go down the conspiracy version of that rabbit hole, what you have in the real world, is that, okay, the historical basis as to why the people throughout Germany flipped out so bad was because you did have people who were fucking with the economy, doing all this bullshit and stuff that was going on. However, those people were not representatives of the vast majority of the population who were also ethnically Yahudim. The problem was they got sucked into that nightmare, and then you had a population that was absorbed in hype train bullshit, witch hunt psychology towards the ethnicity itself, mistakenly not understanding that what's happening here is you just have a group of people who are brainwashed and misled by a handful of really fucking corrupt bankers and elitists and shit like that, who are evil motherfuckers, personally and individually. And they would be evil, period, whether they were that ethnicity or not. Those were the individuals causing the problem. And it's also connected to their non-religion passed off as religion, which is like this business practice thing where it teaches them to exploit and subvert the goyim and all this blah, blah, blah. So the Germans as a whole became aware that that was happening. The problem was that they themselves became racist to the Yahudim genetically from that fury and rage and narrative. That's the problem. And Hitler spurred that on and pushed on everything else. So yes, then you have a nightmare fucking hellscape, a shitstorm that just swept the fucking nation. And then you had atrocities being committed, especially towards Yahudim. And it's just a fucking nightmare. So you got a population that has some sort of a basis as to why they were that angry in terms of, okay, let's get these corrupt bankers out of the country. That's one separate thing. But don't let it turn into, therefore, this entire ethnicity needs to be wiped off the face of the planet. That is the wrong conclusion. It doesn't follow, basically. That's the wrong understanding. But they bought into it, and it was spurred on and pushed and urged into people. And I've run into this so many times over where I've talked to it. It's like, folks, why the hell do you always do that? It's like you can call out the bullshit of the Judaic beliefs, which are obviously fucked up, and a lot of them are directly racist. You can call out the use of the same term and why they purposefully do that to trap people, to accuse everybody of being an anti-Semite, right? If you say the word.
I'm going to have to say that when it comes down to it, like 9 out of 10 people who are theologically Jewish are probably racist as fuck. So,
yes, exactly. So that's the issue. That is an issue. But like the problem is you can't allow the rest of the people to get sucked into it in the narrative. The problem is also, though, that it adds to that is in a house, it's really weird as fuck that you don't have people within that ethnicity protesting against the word Jew referring to themselves. It's like, why don't they just do that? Why don't they just be like, hey, we're not going to agree to that word for ourselves because we don't agree to the religious part. We'll agree to the term Yahudim, the ethnic term, fine. But we're not going to agree to the JEW term because it also arbitrarily refers to the religious stuff, which we're against. Solid divide. No, you can't use that term for us. Why did no group, all throughout history that I know of, protest against this? Why did not one spokesperson...
They want the privilege, man.
That's what I'm saying. So it's like, obviously, they're to some degree implicated if they didn't actually speak against it or be like, no, that's bullshit, right? Like, en masse, because I still, today, it's the weirdest fucking thing. today you have people who are clearly not religiously Judaic in belief, but they, right, left, and center, they're totally fine with the term JEW referring to themselves. It's like, but if you're not religious, how are you okay with that? Don't you do understand that that term is just arbitrarily being used however people decide to use it, and that's a problem for you, right? You understand that. But it isn't, because it gives them a privilege, because it's a trap word to where even if they're not religiously that, nobody can say anything against them at all, in any way, at all whatsoever, and never mind having anything to do with ethnicity. So it's like, that's also very suspicious as fuck. It's like, if it was me, for fuck's sake, and I had a society of people being like, okay, we're Caucasians, and you could just decide that Caucasian means your ethnicity or your religion, right? I would be like, no, I'm only referring to Caucasian ethnically. You cannot use that term religiously. You have to use a different fucking term. Or I need to use a different term for my ethnicity that's separate from the religious term. We can't use the same goddamn word. So that's also something the Germans were heavily aware of. And so the problem is, historically, people tunnel vision in on, oh, Germans totally, absolutely evil. They had no basis to be racist like this. They had no basis to be paranoid, no basis to be angry about these things at all. They were just completely evil and brainwashed. It's like, actually, no. There was a basis that led to the fanaticism and craziness and hype, and it's directly because the Judaic beliefs are racist and do teach them to fuck over other ethnicities, and they never protest against that narrative at all within the entire Judaic world. Even the ethnic Judaic world doesn't protest against it. They just go along with it. And so that's the issue. That's what was pissing everybody off. That's the reason they kept getting expelled from country after country throughout Europe. That's a fact. It's not an opinion. It's not some anti-Semitic narrative. This is a racist teaching. When the country or rulers of the area find out that these are racist teachings, they look, hey, these teachings are a problem. Why are your teachings racist against us? Why do they teach you to screw us over via money? And why are you doing this? Obviously based on your religious teachings. Sorry, we can't have you live in our country because you're fucking with our economy. That's a problem.
For anybody that thinks we're a bunch of racists right now for even talking about this, please do yourself a favor and look up ground interviews. Not specifically, you don't have to look at like in terminology, but look up, like, in general, ground interviews in Israel of people talking about the Palestine genocide. It's a genocide. They'll just call it a conflict, you know?
Yeah, it's a genocide.
Like, it's a fucking genocide. And get some ground interviews of some Israelites, some Jews, basically getting their opinion on the Palestinian genocide and how they're bombarding them. Because you will quickly find out that they view themselves as God's chosen people. Everybody else is just secondary, like how a non-vegan or how a non-vegetarian looks at an animal. Basically, they're like, oh yeah, they matter, but if there's a dog or a person in a burning building, I'm saving her person. Therefore, I'm allowed to do whatever the fuck I want to that dog whenever. That's basically their logic. It's like, you guys matter. You're also God's children, but you're not God's chosen children. So get fucked when it comes down to it. And
Correct.
That's literally kind of exactly what it's like. They'll be like, those mortar shells, I would prefer if they were landing not on a Palestinian, but they're on our land, and it's our chosen land. So if they're not going to get off God's chosen land, which is designed for us, we're going to push them off, just as God wanted us to.
Yeah,
that's exactly what they think. So
and it's right there in the fucking Babylonian Talmud. Anybody can just open the book and look at the damn thing. It teaches them to have that viewpoint, and it gets ingrained in them since they're kids growing up. So obviously they're going to have that perspective, just like any other fucking cult, any other fucking crazed religious ideology. Same goddamn thing. No difference there. The only difference is it's directly a racist teaching. So you have a few Messianic Jew groups and Reformed Jews here and there. You have these other little pockets of Judaic teachings that are not racist in nature, but those are the rare exceptions, not the norm. And even then, they don't actually solidify a separate term for things properly. It's like, that's the thing that just, I couldn't fucking shake, and it was just the most bizarre goddamn thing to me. It's like, I wouldn't be able to fucking stand that. And I would I would assume that there would be like hundreds or thousands of other people aligned with me. Like if you and I were living in a world where nobody was allowed to speak against Caucasianness, and it referred to an ethnicity and a religion at the same time, we could just decide which one it referred to for ourselves at any time. And if anybody criticized Caucasianness, oh, you're an anti-Caucasian. Like, what the hell? I would be like, this is a problem. Nobody can actually talk about it because we're using the same term for a belief and an ethnicity, and we're just bouncing around with what we decide it means arbitrarily when we feel like it. That's not fair to other people. Stop it. But you don't have anybody at all within the Judaic world ever fucking doing that. Ever. Ever, 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 ever. And it's like, what the fuck is wrong with you people that none of you do this? Why don't you demand a separate goddamn term already? You had thousands of years to fucking do it, so do it! I would have. Like, if I fucking appeared at any point in history, I would have demanded a separate term. I would have made it a whole fucking movement, you know?
Yeah, there's like fucking Christianity, and then there's like Lutheranism and stuff like that. If you talk to a Catholicism is literally a denomination of Christianity by definition. They will refuse to acknowledge that they're Christians. They'll be like, I'm not a Christian, I'm a Catholic, because that's just what they're like. They even though they're technically by definition a Christian, they'll be like, no, there's a difference between a Christian and a Catholic. We believe in like XYZ, and it's different. And they will refuse to refer to themselves as Christians.
It's very easy, and everybody else throughout all the rest of the world does this everywhere. But it's like, for some reason, and so it's like people don't. It's like people need to understand, okay, that reason right there that I just described, that's the reason among many others why so many people get suspicious of this stuff, because it's like, it's just a no-brainer. That's what you do if you actually have a problem with somebody, if you're not religious, referring to you as the same term as their religion. That's what you do. You separate out from that and don't allow that to be what refers to you anymore. That's what you do. But they never do that, at least as far as I can tell. So it just goes on this fucking bullshit cycle over and over again of every time somebody says the three-letter word, oh my God, you're an anti-Semite, or like they're just sitting there waiting to trap you in you say anything at all. Oh, you use the three-letter word, okay, there's a problem with the three-letter worders in this particular area. Oh my God, he's racist. Well, it's like, of course you can say that and lie about it, because the word can mean whatever you decide it means. So of course a person could be referring to something completely different that you're accusing them of, and because they use the word, but the word also refers to these other things, so therefore you're also, even if they're not, you're also referring to a racist narrative. There you go, we got you. That's what they do. That's the fucking tactic. And the Germans knew that's what they were doing. That's what the tactic was, and they found that out. In every other country,
guys, I have more problems with Islam than Judaism, but
far.
Judaism's a very fucking close second, just because they do have like a major amount of world power and control of the banks and stuff like that. And given their racist views, it's kind of a little bit like, I can see why the entire portion of the world that's not rich is kind of fucked over and kept that way. So
yep. Islam's definitely the worst at the top. I would say in order: Islam, Judaism, the racist versions of it, the racist religious versions of Judaism is the next second, and then down the road from that, all the extreme cults and all that type of shit downwards. But I'd say, yeah, Islam's definitely the worst at the top, hands down, period. And it, weirdly, ironically enough, at least the Judaics are against Islam itself. They're not Muslims directly, so at least there's that. They're kind of sort of like a weird buffer against Islam spreading into Israel or permeating that area, but they're all about spreading Islam into Europe and encouraging that behind closed doors to fuck over the European countries. But it's just a fucking shitstorm, man. It's such a fucking weird thing. It's just like if those problem viewpoints just disappeared, things would be so much better off. Ethnically,
everybody just needs to become atheists or some version of spiritual, even though I think spirituality has problems with it, but at least it like doesn't have like this organized fucking bullshit.
Have all the ethnic people still around, just don't have the ideology anymore. Stop. Basically, it's like, it's not that complicated, really. And what's interesting is my video I did on these topics is not deleted yet. So it confirms it over and over again. As long as you don't use the 3-letter goddamn word, you're fine. As long as you use 2 separate terms for the ethnicity and the religion, no issues. But as soon as you use the goddamn trap word, all the problems kick in. YouTube videos get deleted, channels get shut down, all sorts of fucking bullshit goes on. Because I keep telling people, I was like, just don't fucking use that word. It's like you're just fucking shooting yourself in the foot. Don't goddamn do it. It's like you have a fucking little trap door on the floor, and it's like, yeah, just stick your foot in it. Just fucking stick your foot in it, goddamn it. As soon as you say the fucking 3-letter word, boom, you've stuck your foot in that fucking trap. And I've literally had conversations with Yahudim ethnically face to face where always, without exception, every time they say I'm a Jew, I always ask them, religiously or ethnically or both. Without exception, I always ask this question, period. Once I hear their answer, from that standpoint, I actually only refer to the ethnicity as Yahudim and the Judaic religion as the Judaic religion, Babylonian Talmudism, etc. I never say JEW ever. And I explain to them why. And they actually recognize the validity of what I'm saying. So it's like they know that I know that they know. it's like you fucking know that this is being used as a trap word, if not by you directly, by others, and you're just going along with it more or less. You know that. So it's like,
100%. I have a friend that's ethnically Jewish or whatever, and like whenever someone like hears a Jew joke or anything like that, or like maybe said by a comedian, or someone says anything that's like slightly like, oh yeah, the Jews on the banks, he'll be like, oh my god, and he's just like, I'm just kidding, but and then I'm like he'll like basically pretend to take offense to it and then just be like, I'm just joking. But he definitely does like hop on the. He does have like he will mention that he's Jewish whenever opportunity arises.
Yep. Ethnic is like, so ethnically, obviously, in his case, not religiously.
Yeah, he's an atheist, so he doesn't believe in anything. He's like an atheist.
And if you ask him why does he agree to use the 3-letter word? Why doesn't he demand a different term for himself if he's not religiously also? Because he obviously understands the arbitrary nature of the term, right? He understands that it's being used not in his favor, even though it is financially and in that way, it's not used in his favor in terms of social interactive perception. So it would help him in terms of interactive dynamics to just deny the label for himself. Do you ever ask him why he doesn't do that? If he's an atheist, what the fuck does it matter? Why not?
He doesn't do it a lot, so I mean, I've never really felt like the motivation to ask him, but he does enough to be like, it's there. But
see, my thing is like, if someone's actually an atheist, they would have zero issue disconnecting from that term. They'd just be like, historical term, Yahudim, no 3-letter word. They would just do that, and it would be a piece of cake. That's it. You know, if they were actually an atheist. That's how I see it, you know, because I've heard so many people say, oh, I'm an atheist too. It's like, that's self-contradictory, though, because the word is
just like
able to mean something else. So
he's
like,
a really big family person, so I guess like his grandfather was like Jewish and all that in the Holocaust and stuff. So maybe it's just like a deep connection to family stuff, being like, oh yeah, I'm technically like his grandfather and father were like, I'm Jewish or whatever. So maybe it's just like for him, it's like a deep family thing. I don't really know.
But you can be connected ethnically, though. That's what I'm saying. You don't, but you can use the term, and you can tell your family members that. Like it's there's so many layers of stupidity to why people keep agreeing to use the term for themselves, even if they're not religious, that are so easy to like just brush aside as really not valid points that you can just get rid of and be done with. So I just, you know, the amount of times I've had that conversation with people, or it's like they say, oh yeah, Jews, okay, religiously, ethnically, they're both. Usually it's ethnically and not religiously, or just minor, you know, community religious stuff at most. Kind of like with Noodles, yeah, ethnically, not religiously though. But and thankfully, Noodles acknowledges that point itself. But it's like, you know, but even he still agrees to let the term refer to himself. It's like, why do you do that? Like, yeah, it's really annoying. It's like,
Noodles, I have problems with Noodles, as you know. But
I'm aware. I heard you guys' conversations.
Oh, you were there for the whole thing, or?
I listened to it. I had to step away for a while and then get back on my phone, but I made sure to listen to it after it was recorded. Yeah, I saw it.
Yeah, that was
Well, hey, recently you've been absorbing in the sacred delusion principle of obliviousness in absorption in Baldur's Gate. So there you go. See, you're not that opposed to
I'm
sacred
not
devotions.
I'm not that opposed when it comes to like practice, but when it comes to like advocacy, it's kind of like I don't advocate for it because I know like no matter what, we're always gonna have like our own sacred delusions. We're gonna always indulge in ourselves, otherwise, as you say, we're gonna go insane.
right.
But it's just like I don't advocate for people to do that because I know it's gonna naturally happen no matter what. So it's just like I don't advocate for it. I advocate for people to try to fight against it as much as possible, and then when it happens, it happens.
I see. Okay. I see. Well, I would say it's bad strategy to do that because you're going to be more susceptible to depression more often, and
Oh,
that's
100%. Yeah.
verifiable, which I don't consider worth it, but I guess to each their own, right? But that was actually quite funny. It was just, it's like, what's funny is with Noodles, I, I know where he's coming from and why. That's why it's so painful to watch a lot of the stuff he's saying because it's like, Noodles, bro. Because I can just see it like 5, 10 years out, however long down the road, when it just stops working out for him as smoothly and he just feels this overwhelming need to get nutrients from fish or meat or eggs or whatever or milk. It's eventually going to hit him at some point, I feel like, and it's going to be this sensation, I have to do this, this sucks ass. Thankfully I know him and I'm going to be one of the people, hey, no big deal, cool, let's just keep hanging out. But the problem, he's definitely going to get guilt tripped heavily by other fanatical vegans and shit like that if and when that happens. So I understand the basis of why he feels always in every case where the animal's harmed like that, like pretty much the same way about it. But it's like I'm so vividly aware of what is misguided about that thinking, though, that it's too tunnel visioned on only one aspect of what's happening. It's not expanded enough to be aware of like the bigger picture of the other sufferings that are going on due to the austerities and asceticism of veganism. Outside of
Essentially.
just, okay, yes, this is harm happening to animals, but like, okay, something's got to give. Like, different people have different thresholds. Different people have different thresholds in terms of what they're willing to tolerate, put up with, how much asceticism they can handle, how much self infliction of regulation they can handle. It varies. It's not just you're a terrible, awful being that's especially horrible if you can't regulate yourself to the degree a vegan can dietarily. The problem is all sorts of issues together at once, not just, okay, this is the issue we need to always be honed in on as the problem. You're killing animals. Oh my God. It's just, yeah, that's the problem. It's too tunnel visioned on one aspect is the main thing with it. And eventually, I hope he's going to see that. But, when he was just on you about I mean, it was in that particular fucking case, it was so goddamn obvious. It's like, okay, if there was a worm on the thing, or if the thing was being hunted, the intention was to actually eat it for food and I mean, for fuck's sake, man. Like, it's not, there's so many, like, vastly worse things going on to rabbits all the time. Dying of hypothermia, starvation, all sorts of problem, disease, getting ripped apart by a cat or a wild animal or whatever the
Yeah,
hell.
it's like plus I don't care. I don't get why he cares so much about like the intentions of why I did what I did. Because like if I was like hunting it for food, it's just like he probably wouldn't have had like half the problem was if like I was doing it for like the fun mixed with like the ethical. Because I thought about it ethically before I did the action. I just also acknowledged in my head that I'm mainly doing it for fun. Because if I was vehemently opposed to it, like viscerally, just like Noodles, or he acknowledges like from a negative totalitarian point, I might be correct, but he wouldn't do it himself. So it's
Yeah.
just like, it's just like maybe if I was like him, I would just be like, I would think about it and not do it. But me, I'm like, oh, I want to do it. Plus, I acknowledge it as something that's like what I should do.
You're
So
just
it's just
being
like,
honest about it. It's like you're not pussyfooting around the issue. You're just being straight up about it. And it's like, I think on one level he appreciates that kind of honesty to a certain extent, but it's hard for him to believe it because he thinks it's just a justification to be malicious and stuff. When no, really, it really isn't that. It's okay, you're just recognizing what's actually going on in your own psychology and going forward in it, where most people just don't do that. And like in my case, like when I fucking had to shoot the bear, quote unquote, had to slash chose to, up in Canada on request of the family that requested me to do it, I, you know, that was a really fucking mind fuck for me because I was thinking in my head, well, I could just leave it to be euthanized later by somebody else and transported elsewhere, or just put to sleep. I guess they have to pay a large amount of money for it to be euthanized or put to sleep, because I'm pretty sure I asked about that, and it's not money they had at the time. I had a young daughter. The bear was climbing up the fucking stairs and shit. So it's like, okay, well, there's all sorts of possibilities that could play out with this, because bears are known to get more violent as time goes on, to attack if they get bigger and get overly used to food, because they had an orchard there and stuff. So it's just, ultimately, I just decided overall, okay, whatever the fuck, I'm just going to be the one to shoot it. I'd rather it be me than somebody else. One and done. And then that's what I did. And fuck, I felt terrible afterwards, but I realized it's like, but any other way this could have gone, I would have felt like 10 times worse if I hadn't done that and the bear ended up mauling the kid to death or something. That would have been way worse than what happened in my trauma of shooting it. So it's one of those things where it's just like, there really is no actual win situation. It's just, you got to decide which one, from what you can surmise, is the lesser of all the bads.
Yeah, exactly. That's what I'm kind of saying. Like,
pretty much about it.
I think life is just inherently suffering. Everything you pretty much do is just either suffering or to prevent your own suffering. And it's kind of just like when it comes to ethics, it's like it's very rare, if not impossible, that you're going to get a perfect scenario. Something is going to be harmed in some way, or consequentially down the line, something could have been better for someone else if you did it, even though it might not be for the net good. So it's like, exactly, you always have to consider the whole and what you might want to do. And it's just like, so it's like, yeah, it sucks that like you might have to cause some harm here, but like in putting down the bear. But when it comes down to it, like the bear is going to probably have problems with the family. It's going to have problems. It's going to die no matter what. It's going to face the problems of old age eventually, and all these factors. It's like, it kind of just adds up to like, yeah, it's an evil of sorts to a bad of sorts to put for the harm of the bullet entering the brain, and it's like body spasming and feeling some nerve pain for a little bit. But other than that, like, you did on the whole a good thing, so you did what you ought to have done. It's just like, there's always evil. You always have to crack the egg to make the omelet.
And that's the thing. It's like, moving forward in my life, over the years, I watched a bunch of just bear attack videos and horror, and it actually made me feel a lot less bad, because I was like, you know what? That bear that I shot could have ended up becoming one of those types of bears that goes around and kills kids and mauls people and shit like that. It could have been. And, who knows? There's no way to fucking tell. It's just
hell, and even if it didn't maul a kid, it's just gonna have to maul something to survive. So it's just like,
no matter what, maul animals or whatever the hell. So yeah, I basically over time haven't felt as bad about it for those reasons, and kind of watching stuff like that helps me ground myself a lot more. Looking at all these horrific bear attack scenarios and shit like that, it significantly helps actually. Oh, yeah. Holy crap! So what this bear would have done to me unarmed sleeping in the middle of nowhere, or a child unarmed sleeping in the middle of nowhere, would have been way worse than what I did to it shooting it. Like, a lot worse. So yeah, if you look at which one would be a worst case scenario, the bear being left to do that maybe would be the worst thing, actually. So, because bears are so goddamn unpredictable. Most of the time they're fine, but as soon as they start fucking eating human food and shit, everything starts to change pretty quick, because now they've got it in their heads that, oh, there's my food source now, and oh, there's a body there that's amidst my food source. Is that also a food source? It's just, yeah, it's a problem. So I don't really feel at all as bad about hunting via necessity anymore as I used to, or animal killing via necessity at all like I used to, really whatsoever, to any degree that it was felt in me before. But that's the thing with the fanatical vegan stuff. It's like, I just wish they would understand that. It's like, guys, like, one of the examples that was just really weird as hell, did you see that video about the vegans walking into the fucking store, the supermarket, and they were standing in front of the milk aisle so people couldn't purchase the milk, shouting on loudspeakers? I was like, that's going to be more counterproductive than anything. Any way you look at it, that's going to be more counterproductive than not, because think about it. most humans most of the time have some baseline awareness that cows aren't treated well really at all in the dairy. They know that already before going in there. They might not be like viscerally aware to where it's in the forefront of their mind all times, but I mean, what is the intention? Just to shout and shout? I mean, if you were to go in there and like let people actually walk past you but have the loudspeaker and talk and show the video, that's one thing. But physically stopping people from being able to access the milk, that's kind of bullshitty. That's kind of asinine because you're like,
I didn't
it's
know
like,
they were legally allowed to do that because I feel like the business would be like, get the fuck out. But
and that's what the business ultimately did, I think, is exactly that right afterwards. But it was just bizarre. It's like you really think that's actually going to help anything? Not only that, let's say they stood there for like 5 fucking hours and then people who otherwise would have bought the milk don't buy it and it goes bad because of that. Well, now you've got the issue of the cow being harmed and the milk going to waste versus the cow was harmed, but at least the milk went to use, nutrifying somebody for a week or something. You know, it's like like these nuances they don't really like process in their heads. It's like you can tell people that and verbally say that and show them a video, but you don't have to stop them from grabbing the product though that's already produced. You can let them still do that while recommending they don't and saying this is why. You don't have to physically be like, no, you can't pick up the milk jug because here's the problem.
No, I 100% agree, yeah.
It just gets really ridiculous at that point. I mean, because like, if a person's fucking determined to drink the milk, they're just going to buy it from somewhere. At that point, you're just interfering with business, period. It's like you're not actually... And you're creating a really bad taste in the public for, oh, vegans equal those guys versus vegans equal people who don't do that and just recommend you don't do it. No, these are people who literally physically stop you from being able to buy food that you're wanting to eat. What the hell, basically? You know, it's just like if you were to go in and like, you wouldn't go in and stand in front of their ability to buy vegetables if you're trying to promote carnism. No, you cannot buy these vegetables. You must be a carnivore. This is healthier for humans. Think how bizarre that would fucking be. You cannot buy these apples because they have pesticides sprayed on them because animal habitat was destroyed to produce them. Therefore, you see? So they don't even understand the absurdity of what they're doing. It's like if somebody were to do that to them, they could make all the same arguments that they're making on behalf of why they shouldn't be allowed to buy that particular batch of apples or that particular batch of lettuce or something. It comes from this particular area where they shoot a bunch of rabbits to protect the lettuce from eating it. Therefore, you're implicated in killing rabbits if you eat this lettuce. It's fucking ridiculous, man.
It's something that just popped in my brain that's ridiculous about vegans. Deontological vegans that are just like, I think animals have like official rights, so like rights, like just like I mean I'm against rights. I don't believe I'm not against rights. I'm for rights in the sense that they're instrumental tools, but not for rights in the sense that like I believe they actually exist.
Yeah.
But there are some vegans that believe that they actually exist, like as a concept. What's your thoughts on that? Like, given that like these same people will hop into their cars and drive around and potentially hit animals or insects that they believe have rights just as much. Like this, like essentially, I feel like they either completely tarnish the word rights to the point where it has no real value behind it, or they just don't know what they're talking about, basically. So
yeah, they take it way to the extreme in the sense of, okay, if we're in the middle of nowhere and if we're operating, let's say we're just dropped in the middle of fucking nowhere, okay? Mm-hmm. We've got to survive. And we're operating legitimately on the premise that, oh, nope. Well, let's say we're in the Arctic. Nope, the polar bear has a right to live. This deer has a right to live. The reindeer has a right to live. They all have this right to live completely. We don't have any right at all. It's murder if we kill any of them. Okay, what the fuck are we going to do then? Well, we're not going to murder any of them. We're just going to eat the moss and lichen and plants and whatever else and, algae or something. And we're going to call it good. Or we're going to walk 2,000 fucking miles south to leave the area to eat apples and oranges and shit like that, Okay, but while we're here, we're hypothermic. What are we going to do to keep warm for the next 3 or 4 weeks in this area where we can't leave because the snow's fucking 20 feet goddamn high? Like, but there's a polar bear there walking around that we could probably spear, and it's walking around this way. There's a fucking, there's fish out there we could spear or hook or whatever. Nope, they have all got rights. Well, you run into a logistical problem there. It's like, okay, well, obviously those rights have to be infringed on then. Even if the rights do exist, they need to be infringed on via necessity. Of course, that's the more extreme case. Now let's zoom to the city. Okay, same premise. Animals have rights like humans do. If they're killed, it is murder. Well, now you have the problem of a logistical nightmare of something that's impossible to enforce and something that's impossible to actually determine or judge either way, because you can't have, there's no way, it's way too fucking arbitrary. Like, one person might actually need physiologically to eat meat of some variety or some type. And that's why they're involved in killing the animal, either hunting or slaughtering or whatever, or buying it from a store. Like someone who's hypoglycemic, for example. Now, if we're going to go like, okay, no, we're only going to provide meat to people who absolutely are confirmed medically to need hypoglycemics and these and that and blah, blah, blah. Nobody else. Well, okay, so you're authorizing murder for only those types of people, but not for others. So it's the issue is we can only realistically have rights among a species that is our level of intellectual capacity or higher, in the sense that you can only have rights for a species that's able to process morals and ethics as a thing. And also, if like someone is paraplegic or something and they can't process that way, there very much realistically is such a thing as species hierarchy, in the sense that, okay, they're a member of your species, therefore they take priority logistically, period, because that's the way to go about it. That's the proper thing to do here. It's not.
I don't know why, though. I mean, to me, I'd have to ask why, because I don't particularly value paraplegics in any way, or, I mean, I don't particularly value anybody besides those I personally care for. So it's like,
The reason
I only value like the experience of those.
Okay,
And
I have a
and
very
how they
specific reason why it's a reason. Okay, so even if at the baseline level, what you're talking about is all we're dealing with, where, okay, math calculation, paraplegic, not functioning, somebody else over here functioning. Okay. Well, there has to be a consistency across the board with our members of our species, because if we remove that consistency, then it opens up the floodgates of people deciding thresholds of, okay, this person's disabled to the degree that I personally think it's okay to murder them now versus not. And then somebody else says, yeah, I agree with that. And then somebody else, yeah, I kind of agree with that too. And it creates this fucking nightmare scenario of anybody anywhere at any time being able to just decide, because they're, or whatever, that, okay, it's okay for them to just be eliminated or euthanized because I say so. And somebody else is like, no, it's not. And somebody, yes, it is. So you have to have a logistical consistency across the species for it to work. You can't just be like, okay, humans have rights, but only if they have this cognitive level, because it doesn't interpersonally, intersocially work otherwise. Like, you know what I'm saying? That's what I'm trying to get at, if that makes sense. So even if we're going on the premise of, in some objective sense, in some math calculation statistic sense, okay, objectively speaking, or as close to that as possible, even though there's no literal objective, I'm using it figuratively, that the paraplegic, even though we have an emotional connection, logically, rationally, mathematically, strictly, it's more logistically sound to just quote unquote euthanize them or whatever. Even then, it's not practically doable as a thing that's implementable, because you have the problem of interpersonal backlash to insane degrees, to where it's that inconsistency principle, because somebody else could decide somebody a little above a paraplegic in function is able to be removed, and somebody else a little bit above that. And so you just have this constant back and forth, everybody squabbling at what level is, so it's a lot simpler to just have a consistent across the board, across the species.
I mean, yeah, I agree, but I think that's just, just to say that there are no rights, and that like instrumental, it's just an instrumental tool to basically minimize pain, and that we have to assess each situation, and that laws essentially are like the best we can get to like you don't have a right per se, you just have like laws to protect you from certain case scenarios to minimize your chance of suffering.
Yeah,
but
a major factor with the animals is the fact that they, logistically speaking, humans ourself and other humans must take precedence and priority in the vast majority of situations. That's just the case. That's how it operates. Because other members of our species are going to be the ones who are able to medically assist us or help us if and when we need help.
Oh yeah, I agree. Like I think
Countries that can't do that,
humans should
peers
take
can't do that.
priority over animals, and I think like vegans who think otherwise, vegans who think like if there's a dog or a person in a burning building, which one do we save? All being equal, knowing nothing about the dog and knowing nothing about the person that says like, oh, I can't choose either, or I'm a dog person, so therefore I choose the dog. I think they're just foolish because given the fact that the person's a moral agent, then they could be potentially a person that could help people stop cancer, help a homeless person get off their feet, you know. And a dog can't do that, you know. Like it's
So
just obvious to me
what about a
that
scenario of a paraplegic or a dog being saved, knowing nothing else about them? So, or let's put it this way: a fully functional, highly trained dog that's trained as a rescue dog.
yes, that's
Okay?
what I said. That's what I was thinking about. That that's why I said like a just normal dog, because like if it's just a normal person and then like in a rescue dog, I might actually save the rescue dog over just a
But
random
here's the
Joe.
thing, though:
But
saving
I'm
the
a
rescue dog.
moralist, so I mean, like,
But
you know.
what about though? So this dog is trained though to rescue people from disasters that it also found itself in. So it's trained to normally rescue the paraplegic in rescue situations. That's what it's trained for. But it's also in the situation with the paraplegic. So which one in that case do you save? It's quite obvious to me I would still save the paraplegic as priority versus the dog. And the reason for that is to, let's say, if it's a burning building or something, to eliminate the paraplegic dying of agonizing pain via flames,
I
if
mean,
for
yeah,
no
but
other
then the
reason.
dog would die from the agonizing flames for no reason.
Yes,
I mean, either
exactly.
way, one of them would. So it's just kind of like the pain is going to be experienced is pretty much equal, and then I mean, at least potentially. I mean, I would be projecting to say like the person at least has a hope of like potentially an afterlife, but they would also have like the fear of hell and stuff. So, I mean, either one can have existential dread. The dog can have like less existential dread, but more of like a primal fear.
Yeah.
But
But the point is, there's every solid reason, morally and ethically and emotionally, to save the paraplegic over the dog in that particular situation. And across the board in every single situation, for the most part, save and except if some total asshole who's a murderous nutjob who directly harms people is burning up. Obviously, in that case, you would save the dog versus that person if you knew that's exactly the type of person they were. So it's like, because of course you could deal with a scenario where, well, there's a possibility the person you're saving is a nightmarish fucking psycho killer,
wait,
serial
now I'm
it's like
a little confused now because I mean it kind of sounded like the reason we should that like essentially experientially the human and the dog are equal, but because the human can actually potentially save people and help people and whatever, it has more value and therefore should be saved in the fire, given it's just a normal dog and a normal person.
but that only applies
Um,
to those certain types of people. We have to extend it to other reasons other than just that as to why we'd save humans over rescue dogs, basically.
I
It
mean,
has to
what
extend to beyond that because even without the rescue dog, there's still other humans that could do the saving. We don't require the rescue dog to have to be the one doing saving. We can do it ourselves directly, or
Yeah,
other
yeah,
people.
yeah. I'm just saying, like, if there is a rescue dog, though, it does have that ability. It's just like I could be a rescue person, but the rescue person, like, in the situation, like I'm just an Uber driver. So, like, assuming normal utilitarianism and not negative utilitarianism, like, a rescue driver of some sort would be more like an ambulance driver would be more valuable under utilitarianism than an Uber driver. Like,
Yeah. So in the
it's
case of
just
the
it's too much
paraplegic,
of a
it's, let's put it this way: in a scenario where somebody went in and didn't save the paraplegic, and then they justified it or tried, or they explained it the way you're explaining it. This is the reason why I didn't do it, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. It creates a very bad, terrible, awful precedent because then it cascades and more people start to do that. So now you have paraplegics or people who are close to that, like now terrified for their lives that, oh, at any time I'm just going to be dumped off a cliff or fucking like killed or euthanized or whatever. Who knows? They might want to actually continue living instead of not. They may, so it's like, and I'm not on top of that, even if they want to pass, they might be terrified of just being left somewhere if it's burning up. So there's a cascading negative effect of really bad precedents connected to that. Now, somebody might say, if nobody was looking, if there was no way they could find out,
Oh
it
yeah,
only
that's what
makes
I'm talking about. I guess it's like more like
That's
pocket
just a
dimension
scenario where you're
scenario.
the only fucking person who knows what happened, and you decided for some fucking reason to save the rescue dog over the
Yeah,
paraplegic in the argument. Oh, but the rescue dog can potentially blah blah blah. help
that's
more
what I'm
than-"
talking about. Like it's like a random burning building. Like everybody like we're all like everybody's doing their thing like going through life, and all of a sudden everything time pauses and like a god whisks you all away, like you, a random dog, and a random guy, and into a burning building pocket dimension, and whatever one you save gets whisked back into the normal world with you, and the other person that you didn't save just gets kept in the burning pocket dimension, you know? So no one ever knows about it, but the effects of that person's usefulness or non-usefulness would go on in the actual world. So it's like, in that scenario, I'd say, no, we should save the rescue dog because no one else would know about it and it would still be more useful given the
Well,
paraplegic would just be a drain to society.
I would say
But
this: the paraplegic isn't necessarily only a drain to society because they might be an emotional connection, an emotional surge of inspiration to others for helping someone, so therefore they're inspired to help other people. So there's a lot of nuance there, but the point is, from me directly, personally, I would, in every case, without question, save the human first, animal second, like across the board, period. Minus the case of the person being some absolutely awful being. Other than that, if they were just a normal person, whatever, I didn't really know anything about them. It could be a good, decent person or something. They're screaming for help. It's always going to be the human in every time, especially if it's a kid or
I
someone.
mean, same, but only for selfish reasons because with my image. But, I mean, essentially, like I would, in an actual circumstance, I despise human beings and I view animals as useless, just blights that feel pain and cause pain. So the way I look at it is, it would be basic, and I'm pro-mortalist, so the rescue dog would be basically just perpetuating suffering. So the way I look at it is like either one is useless to save. You're better off letting them both burn in the scenario.
So
So,
horrible.
but for my
Oh my god.
so for my image though, I would save the man or woman over the dog. But you
But if
know,
you had no image to worry about and there was no image involved, if it was just you were there, would you just let
yeah,
them both burn up then? In that case, like just let them
probably.
both burn up.
This is actually
Probably.
really funny because I was actually thinking about this
Oh god.
exact thing like a day or two ago, and I thought like because people have been talking. I was in vegan like listening to a vegan video, and they're like, well, "What a person in the building," and I was thinking about it. I'm like, honestly, I think I just let them both burn. Like, I think like I would have the like emotional in human instinct to be like I should save them maybe. I mean, but I feel like once the logic kicks in, I'd be like, hmm, can I get away with this? Just letting them burn? I'm like, I think so. Like, honestly, I could just tell. I could say I could
And
get
of
out.
course,
Like,
that's the
there's so much.
psychopath you can.
There's so much. There was so much smoke. I was coughing. Like, I tried to lift it up, but it burnt my hands. My muscles were straining. It was like,
Just do
gee,
the public narrative
gee
thing.
whiz. I tried. you know.
That reminds me of the fucking like the hatchet wielding hitchhiker. But like, just to solidify it, in my case, I would just jump. Put it this way: my threshold is if I can reasonably do it, and it's not an insanely over the top risk for myself. If I'm not literally risking myself being burned alive while doing so, maybe just getting burned here and there. But it's like, yeah, I could probably do this. Get them out of here, Then I'd do it, and I'd save the human first priority, and then both ideally, and then very quickly after the animal. But the thing is, it's like, but if there's too much of a risk to me, then I just won't risk it. Then, like, it's not worth it to me to risk to that degree my own lifelong permanent burn injuries or a scarred face or whatever. So yeah, I'm
For
heroic
the
up to a
people,
threshold,
for the
but I'm not like
people,
heroic to like an extreme insane degree that a
for
lot
the
of
people
people
that are
might.
really thinking I'm a sadist right now, to be very specific, what I would do is I'd strangle a man to death, and then the fire would take care of the evidence. So that way he doesn't
Oh
suffer from
God,
flames.
that's the psycho.
Plus I get the satisfaction.
I'm so glad you're honest about being a psychopath. It makes everything so much fucking easier. Just explain it. It's like, yeah, he's a psychopath. So what do you expect? Of course that's what he's going to say. The person was like, "How did I end up here?" That's actually really funny. That's a good question, man. How did you end up here?
Just stumbled across the channel and just like, holy hell.
A psychopath Apostle Ultron talking to Perpetual Pervious. It's like, oh yes, this should be an interesting conversation. Oh god. But you heard about that guy, right? The fucking hatchet wielding hitchhiker. He was like
I think I've
praised
heard of
and
him.
lauded for being this. What's that?
I think I've heard of him.
Yeah,
Yeah.
back in like 2013, 2012, 2013-ish thereabouts. he what later was found out, he was in the car with the guy that he laced the marijuana with something himself. And this was found out later, and he gave that marijuana to the guy, and he was making fun of the guy for not being able to handle it. But the guy who took the laced marijuana totally flipped out and went crazy and killed one lady by bashing his car into her. And then he was getting out trying to kill a second lady. And so this guy that was in the car with him, who gave him the laced marijuana, smacked him on the head 3 times with his hatchet. The third time was with the hatchet blade. It was obviously very dull. It wasn't very sharp. That's why it didn't actually go all the way into his skull. But the point was, yeah, that took the guy down, and he survived and was imprisoned for it. But the thing is, it's like he was lauded as this amazing, great fucking hero for like a long ass goddamn time, like online everywhere.
Wait, so he drugged the dude. The dude that he drugged went crazy.
Yeah,
and
but
then
that
he
wasn't known or
hatcheted the
found
guy,
out
and then
until
he
later.
hatcheted the dude that he drugged.
Yes,
And he went
exactly.
crazy
So
as a hero. So
it's
he
like
literally made a dude go insane and then
yes,
stopped
he made
him.
a dude go insane and then fucking sadistically. So he like got off on the whole situation playing out, and this was only found out like years later. It's like when you see his initial interview, it's like there is something off about this guy. And as you watch, there's a documentary on Netflix about him actually. But as you go forward watching it, you see, and everybody starts noticing more and more off with this dude. Like, okay, this is really negative off stuff. There's something really off with this guy. What
So
the
there
hell?
was a hatchet, and so it was his car, and he had the hatchet, right? And he was planning to drug this guy, and then he went off. So
He
was he
was the
planning to like?
passenger. So the guy was driving him somewhere. He was the passenger riding with the guy he was driving with. The guy who was driving received the lace marijuana and then went nuts with it. Basically, he flipped. Whatever the fuck happened. And then when he crashed into the one girl, so he murdered the one lady due to being laced, the marijuana being laced, and that affecting his thoughts and everything. And this other guy who was high, jumped out, probably himself, having taken the laced marijuana or something, whacked him on the head 3 times with the hatchet. The guy collapses. And then right after that happens, he did this interview, and everybody throughout the world was praising, I love this man. I want to marry him. All sorts of chicks were saying he's amazing. He's a hero and blah, blah, blah. But you look at it, and he's like, this guy's like weirdly, strangely, really getting off on the facts that he like was, did this deed, and he's trying to pass it off as like this humble card thing. But later on, in his talks, he talks about how he's like, oh yeah, but if somebody fucks with me, I'm gonna, and he talks about, he like really gets into his graphic descriptions of really punishing people and really roughly getting vengeance on them and shit like this. And it's like there's something just weird about it. So what people realized eventually, what happened was he actually murdered this other guy who he claimed raped him. But what was strange about it was that, wait a minute, when this information came out later, like a couple years down the road, where he was telling people is, oh yeah, I laced it, and then the guy went nuts, and he was laughing about that. It's like, wait, there's not really anything heroic about this, really, much at all. It was a lot more about him getting off on this vengeance for the guy that he induced in the guy than it was actually saving anybody, really. That was more or less a secondary concern, kind of like collateral, right? Because so when he murdered this other guy who supposedly raped him, it was very suspicious because he went back to the guy's house after he had supposedly been raped previously on a previous incident and then killed him. So I was like, wait a minute. If you're a young guy, you're in health, why wouldn't you just do it then and there? Why would you wait and then go back and kill him later? It doesn't really make a whole lot of sense logistically unless you're pre-calculatedly really having it out. Okay, I'm going to kill this guy. It would be different at just heat of the moment. The guy's just killed as he's trying to rape somebody. But the fact that he went back there after already leaving the guy's house after he had woken up and realized he had been raped or something like that, according to what he was saying, in other words. So what you have is a situation where this guy was setting himself up in bad situations so that he could get vengeance on people, but he was like setting up the bad situation to get vengeance on them, so that he would have an excuse to get vengeance on them. It wasn't like,
Out of
and that,
curiosity, was it his hatchet, or was like there's just a random hatchet and the dude's car that he was driving
as
with?
far as I know, it was his hatchet that he carried around in his backpack.
He
It
just
was
fucking
his.
carried a hatchet around and drug people. Okay, yeah, I know. Yeah, that guy was a fucking murderer.
So yeah, it's like what the, so it's like he basically sets a situation up where people are going to see that he's the victim or think he's the victim. And it's weird because even if he was raped in that case, it's like he really did put himself into that situation. And like he agreed to go to the guy's house. It's like, dude, you got to be really fucking dumb as shit if you're gonna agree as like a young hitchhiker guy to just go to some dude's house and drink a drink he's giving you or something. Like at any time, anything could be laced ever. So it's like you're being dumb first of all if you're gonna agree to that, especially if you're a guy. And
If you're a hitchhiker, you gotta be careful. I mean, I've
yeah,
picked up hitchhikers before, did it yesterday, but I'm a trustworthy fellow.
yeah, exactly. So the
I
thing
may be
was,
a psychopath, but I'm a trustworthy fellow.
even if the guy did rape him, it's still murder. I mean, but the thing is, it would have looked a lot more like manslaughter if it wasn't so obviously like a revenge killing after the fact. It would have been more of a, I guess what he was trying to plea was manslaughter. But what happened was everybody realizing this about him, his fame, his recognition just completely went down the drain. It's like, okay, yeah, this guy's, he's really not at all even as close to what we thought he was as a hero or whatever whatsoever. He's got all sorts of weird fucking mental issues. You can't really ever tell if he's telling the truth or lying or exaggerating, and that's a problem in and of itself, which indicates he's not being fully truthful. And he obviously gets off on this vengeance in an over the top degree of gratification. It's like instead of just being like, "Oh yeah, I did what I had to do. It really sucks that I had to do that." It's like, "Nah, yeah, I fucking showed him, and I got him, and everything else." So it's just very bizarre, you know. It's instead of just, you know, like for me, if some weird bizarre situation happened like that as a young guy or whatever, I wouldn't have the psychology of, yeah, I showed them, I got it. It would more just be like, I did what I had to do. This person's an abuser. That's what had to happen. I was defending myself or whatever, or retaliating. And I was in a rage. It was heat of the moment, blah, 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 whatever. And of course, if that happened, I wouldn't speak to anybody. I would strictly only talk to my lawyer. That's it. That's the other problem. A lot of these idiots, they just talk and jab their jaws.
Did that guy get in trouble at all for any of this, or did he like completely off the hook?
Oh, he went to prison for the rest of his life.
Oh, okay.
So murdering the guy, yeah, because he got charged with murder, and the evidence showed that it was premeditated, that he knew exactly what he was doing, and combined with the evidence of him saying that he laced the marijuana and was laughing about it, the guy he later smacked in the head with a hatchet, that was probable cause to recognize that, well, he kind of semi-purposely set himself up to be assaulted by this other guy, or put himself in a situation where it would be likely, excuse me, so he would have an excuse to kill him, basically, is what it is. So it's like he was he was an excuse hunter for reasons to kill people. That's what he was. That's basically explains the guy in essence. He was a guy who hunted for excuses to harm or kill people. And that was his thing. That was his shtick or whatever. And it was obviously his brain was fried on fucking marijuana like nobody's business, or whatever fucking else he took with that over the years. But man, it's bizarre shit. Like documentary, I think you'd get a kick out of it, man. That thing was weird as fuck. Like
so
the amount of
reminds me of him of Mia. Is it just the part where it's like just the openness to like the sadism or whatever? Or...
Mm-hmm. Like when I was watching, I was like, you know what? Brent would probably like this documentary a lot because it's just the bizarreness of the scenario and all this other shit like that. It was like, what was really it really illustrated perfectly well how the public is so fast to glorify somebody as this amazing hero without first learning what the actual motives were or the psychology and why a person did what they did. You know, it's like, okay, yeah, that one act might have been, okay, he saved the lady's life, but he was also what caused the problem to happen in the first place. So it wasn't like the lady being rammed into, the other lady dying, that he was completely off the hook of. He was basically indirectly the murderer of the other lady via the laced marijuana, which was endangering other people on the road, etc. And he was laughing about that. So it's like this guy isn't a fucking hero. It's just he ended up saving a lady situationally, but his motive wasn't really saving people. He's psychologically, he was just all over the fucking place. So, you know, a hero would be like somebody who didn't lace drugs, and the guy just did it of their own accord, and you're like, what the hell? And then you go to save the lady who's being assaulted. But, you know, lacing drugs and giving it to the guy and laughing about it, oh yeah, he couldn't handle his shit, ha 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 ha. And then you go smack his head with the hatchet afterwards. There's so much wrong about this that's, you know, just crazy, man. Absolutely insane.
Yeah, I can't say that I'd hatchet someone to death on a highway, but...
Well, the guy survived. The guy he hatcheted lived. He didn't die. He
Really?
smacked him 3 times on the head, 2 times with the back of the hatchet, the 3rd time with the blade part. And it left a gash on the guy's head. I was laughing when he was in court with the guy who's like in prison who fucking got the drugs laced. In a weird way, I kind of slightly just the whole thing was so fucking messed up. I kind of slightly felt bad for the guy who got hatcheted because it wasn't really his fault that he actually went off the hook and did that. It was mostly because of the lace shit that was put into him. So it's like, fuck. And it was just so fucking bizarre that the guy who did that was lauded as the hero of the situation. But this guy was just fucking sitting there like dead silent in the fucking courtroom.
Just lobotomized, and everybody's just like, fuck this guy.
It's just like, so it's like the situation. So he helps this homeless guy, he gives him a fucking ride, and now his life's over, and he gets smacked in the head by the hatchet from this guy. He's like, what the fuck happened? And then he's just fucked. He's totally screwed the rest of his life while this other fucker's being lauded as a hero. The guy that screwed him over. I mean, it's like, what the hell? God. I mean, there's so many scenarios that you almost can't get more bizarre
in real life, man.
This is one of them.
Real life is the most bizarre shit, honestly.
I'm probably going to bring up that scenario in a video coming up soon, man.
Dude, you should.
That's so fucking weird, man. But no, like this hitchhiker, this guy was offered fucking millions, like limousines full of marijuana. He was offered all sorts of shit, luxury hotel rooms, everything. And he was just running around trashing everything, ADHD, peeing on the ground, and just breaking all sorts of laws. They had him on Jimmy Kimmel and everything. It's like, what the hell is it? This guy got handed the world over some one little act, and the fact that people just thought he was kind of cool and liked his attitude after whacking that guy with the hatchet. It's like, oh yeah, this guy's awesome, amazing, blah, blah, blah.
Kind of reminds me of like the women that like fooing over like serial killers and shit like that.
Yeah, exactly.
Basically over them. Yeah.
The thing is, you need that. That's watching that. It was like a very big eye opener because I was like, okay, I always need to make sure that I really know who a person actually really is before I praise them over the top for things that they don't deserve praise for. You know, it's like, okay, cool, they saved the person from drowning, but were they involved in somebody else drowning that they didn't save? Like, what else happened here? And that's why I always say I would probably make a really good detective or investigator because I immediately jump to all these other little things that might be going on behind the scenes that aren't obvious to the public eye. It's like, okay, is there anything amiss here? It's like, okay, well, they saved this person, but they could have saved this other. Why didn't they? What's going on here, right? And then paying attention to what they say, how they portray themselves, and blah, blah, blah. Do they dive into and agree to the hero narrative or whatever? You know, all that type of jazz. But I guess people got a false idea that he was more humble than he was because he was just kind of expressing avoidance or whatever to, like, he was very nonchalant about all the money they were offering, about all the interviews and everything. He's like, oh, whatever, cool, sure, I'll agree to it, you know. But and so it gave people like this false sense that he was more of a humble, easygoing kind of a guy than he actually was. And it really makes you wonder. It's like, had he killed anybody else before? Had he bashed somebody else's head in before via a situation he created? Like, you don't know. It's like a big question mark, you know? Has he gotten away with other stuff that he wasn't apprehended for or what? I mean,
If he was given life, I mean, I imagine he probably would have admitted it by now. But then again, there's some weird serial killers out there that I just don't understand at all. That just refuse to admit the murders, like years later, even though it's really fucking obvious.
Well, it seems like in his case, he actually believes it was self-defense, even though he set the situation up, at least somewhat, to lead to that. So, it's this weird, like, psychological trait. I've known people who have that psychological trait in themselves. There's specific mental conditions that lead to that, where it's like they will they'll set a situation up where they'll be the cause of a part of the problem, but they'll legit believe, like with every ounce of their being, that they are only defending themselves or only doing what's right and blah, blah, blah. Paranoid schizophrenics are known to do this also. So who knows? There may have been some schizophrenia in the guy. I think they might have mentioned something. It was definitely ADHD was part of the cycles. But I was like, there's got to be something else going on here. But yeah, like paranoid schizophrenics are known for that. They believe that no matter what happens, they are always the one more in the right than others, more or less guilty than others. You know, oh, I did it because I had to, blah, 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 so on and so forth. And it doesn't actually register to their awareness that they actually caused the problem. It's just, nope, it's only ever others causing the problem. That's it, period, no matter what. And it's impossible for them to recognize their own implications in anything. Whereas like you and me and everybody else who has a properly functioning brain chemistry, you clearly recognize which aspects of something you were involved in causing or, you know, versus not. But a lot of times paranoid schizophrenics, they don't. They can't do that, actually. And it's literally a brain chemistry flaw that actually goes to at least the epigenetic level. But even there's research now showing that it actually goes to the genetic level, to where it's legitimately to that degree. That's why paranoid schizophrenia is completely incurable in most cases, because it's a fucking genetic disorder, not a situational disorder. That's like there's evidence popping up that they're not able to plasticize their way out of it, like with brain plasticity, like work their way out of it. It's literally their genetics itself in terms of how their brain operates. It is that system. It is the paranoid schizophrenia. So very intriguing. I'm fascinated by this whole subject of brain chemistry and like neurons and all this type of shit, because you have some fucking weird goddamn scenarios, like the scenario of the guy who fucking got the brain injury and then went off the handle and became this raging, abusive nightmare person just from his brain being fucking damaged and shit like that. Whereas before he was like this totally upstanding guy and everything else. It's just weird shit like that, you know?
Phineas Gage.
Yeah, Phineas Gage is one, and then there was other examples like his, but yeah. And it's so obvious that there is no meaningful soul of any meaningful definition, even if there is one. It's like a redundancy to where, you know, if brain alteration changes how you behave and think and feel, like to that degree, what the fuck use is there having a soul anyway? It doesn't really even do anything, you know?
Oh, 100%.
That's what I say to people. It's like, you know, people go on and on, oh, but the soul, but the soul, but the soul. But it's like, so what?
You're just judging someone's soul when the whole entire actions are affected by their brain. It's just like silly shit.
Yeah, in the case of the guy who had one half of his brain where the brain was disconnected, one half was an atheist and one half was a Christian.
Wait, really?
Yeah, there's a case of this. Fucking Sam Harris and Matt Dillahunty were talking about this. I'm going to bring that guy up in future videos too, but that guy was like solid disproof that there's a soul or any, you know, it's like what? So does he have like half a soul on one side? One half goes to heaven, the other half just like disappears or goes to hell or whatever the fuck. So it's like, or half of his soul goes to heaven. He's like a half angel for the rest of eternity. Well, unfortunately, half of your consciousness and awareness was completely opposed to me and didn't believe and didn't have faith. But this half did. So, you know, sorry, you just have like, what, half a head in heaven or some shit like that. It just becomes absurd with stuff like that. You know, and the fact is that these soul promoters don't have any solid way to explain that. And like, you know, the consumption of twins where there's two twins to start off with and one consumes the other, like goes into the other twin and becomes part of it when they appear versus like maintaining its own separate. So it's like, what, are two souls in the same body now? Or what? Did one soul disappear and merge into the soul of the body? Like, what the fuck are we dealing with here, right? you know, or like twins that are like conjoined. It's like, well, do they have two separate souls that are like conjoined bodily, or or in the rare case of a person with two heads, it's like, well, is that two separate souls or one individual soul with two heads? Like, what the fuck are we dealing with? It's just so stupid and arbitrary, and it's like these ideas of the fucking like way in the past they used to talk about the heart, right? The god of the heart, the consciousness. It's because in the past, in many areas of the world, like in India, stuff, they believed that the heart directly was its own like center of feelings, awareness, and emotions, and everything else, separate from the brain. And we know scientifically that that's incorrect. Now, the heart has its organ function of beating and pumping in response to the brain, but it's not like this separate soul-seated location. Whereas in the past, a lot of people thought that was the case.
Now I think it's the pineal gland.
What's that?
Now I think it's the pineal gland or some weird
pineal gland. Yeah. Well, the thing is, Aaron Ra was talking about that recently in The Soul and Neuroscience, or rather disproving the soul via neuroscience, where he was saying, yeah, the neuroscientist he was talking about, he's like, the reason neuroscientists don't even deal with the soul at all is because, number one, it's completely unnecessary. Number two, it's irrelevant. And number three, we have solid explanations for why every one of these fucking things happens. Every emotion, every experience, there's like an explanation why those things go on. And the pineal gland being where it is, it's known the function that it performs. We know what it does. And there's not really all that much of a mystery about it, really, like the soul promoters try to make it out to be. So that's what he was saying. He's just like, yeah, neuroscientists who are actually active in it don't really even deal with that because they're interested in, okay, what is the mechanics? What's actually happening here? So it really disproves that even the pineal gland is this seat of the soul or whatever.
Because what I find really funny is that all these fuckers that believe in the pineal gland being like a source of creativity and like the soul and like all these things, like bullshit things, it's just like they all ironically are like cold bastards in my opinion. Like they're all like elitist fuckers that drink like bottled water and don't give a shit about the poor. And then there's like me, I'm like, yeah, I just drink my tap water, and my pineal gland statistically should be fried, but I actually give a damn about the world a little bit.
Yeah, exactly. It's a total bullshit narrative. It's like most of these people who peddle that shit are paranoid schizophrenics or total fucking assholes behaviorally. So it's like you gotta be fucking kidding me. If this motherfucker has a clearer pineal gland than me, who obviously cares about people more than this shithead does, what the fuck? What use is clearing the pineal gland then in that case? What use has it? What good has it led to? You may as well fucking, have a calcified pineal gland and be a better quality person than have a totally clear, pure, shining pineal gland and be this demonic fucking asshole because of it. It's like, what the hell? It also becomes a redundancy because that's a great proof. That's actually a great point I should bring up. It's like, if the pineal gland being clear actually, in fact, was directly scientifically correlated with better behavior, a kinder person, a more loving person, a more caring person, we'd be able to demonstrate that and show that and see that. But what we see is there is no one-to-one correlation whatsoever with the pineal gland being calcified more or less or whatever in terms of how good quality of a person is or how loving they are or whatever, really much at all. It's just a matter of, okay, theirs is more calcified and theirs not. It really doesn't correlate to what these new agers are trying to claim it correlates to. But they're basically just grasping at their last little straws. So this guy was describing, it's basically it's a ghost of the gaps argument. Like, you've heard of God of the gaps. The soul is literally just a ghost of the gaps argument. So the soul, the amount of places the soul could dwell or be functional is getting smaller and smaller and smaller with every new discovery. It's like there's less wiggle room for the soul to be functionally useful for anything the more discovery gets made. And my conclusion is that, okay, so what? Even if somehow we determine that there is a soul located within the pineal gland, and that's like the seat of it, where it's hidden and tucked away or whatever, what follows that? Okay, well, it didn't prevent us from being trapped into this hellscape, did it? It didn't make the person who has a clearer pineal gland a better quality person. So what use is the damn thing? Like, I mean, you may as well just fucking roll a marble around on the floor and say, hey, look, it's a soul. Clunk, and it hits the wall. Cool. And then like nothing follows that. It's like there's nothing there. So even if the soul exists, it's logistically as if it doesn't exist. It's so useless, it may as well not. That's the point. And that's like the, to me, the most shining proof of the redundancy of the soul, the irrelevancy of it, is the uselessness of it. It's so useless that it might as well not exist. Even if it does. It's just kind of like a marble floating around. That's about it. It doesn't really. But the problem is people add so much fucking credence to it, like, oh, it's such a significant, amazing, incredible, wonderful thing. How?
It allows you to suffer another plane after you die.
Yeah, exactly. That's literally all it would allow you to do, is take rebirth or reform somewhere else in some other sentient variation. So we're better off not fucking having souls. That's they try to act like it's like a better thing having, when no, it's actually worse. It's because you're trapped forever being eternally that thing or that being, and you literally can never escape being that soul. That's like a worse trap than fucking being trapped in the brain and water. What's that?
I said drink tap water. Y'all.
The thing with me is I just can't fucking stand the taste of the goddamn tap water. It fucking burns my stomach and shit and tastes horrible. I realize there is a marginal degree of...
To bring this full circle, the elitist Jews want you to drink the bottled water to preserve their eternal wealth so that you get reincarnated. Drink tap water. It's the government trying to free you from your soul.
Oh my god. See, for many years, I had wished I drank only filtered water over all these years, mainly because...
I just lost 2 viewers. Oh my god.
You just did just now?
Yeah, the instant I said that, this 2
Oh my god, dude. It's so fucking ridiculous. I'm going to do a total video on that. I've noticed that. I'll say one goddamn thing and like instantly people will subscribe. Where I was like, are you fucking kidding me? One fucking point or topic that you don't like, and then boom, you're insta unsubscribed. Give me a fucking break. Come on. What the hell? It's like you love and adore like 90% of my content plus. One little thing I say you just like, and then boom, unsubscribe. Come on.
Cracks a joke about the Jewish people trying to control the world's water supply, and then it's just like, no.
No. Well, the thing with the whole fluoride thing, it's like, yeah, I prefer filtered water, and I'm aware that there is a marginal connection between too much fluoride in the body and bad health effects, premature aging, premature graying and stuff like this, and there are correlations with that. But from what I'm seeing, it's way exaggerated in the fucking conspiracy narratives and shit, as is everything else, conspiracy hype narrative. So they take one thing that has some degree of facts to it, and then they create this tangent narrative that's vastly exaggerated from that thing. Like, for example, all day, every day, we're ingesting all sorts of shit everywhere that is bad for our bodies, that's gradually killing us. We're breathing it in, we're drinking it in everything we're drinking. Juice, wherever we're drinking, whatever we're drinking, so anything, And filtered water, sure, in those cases, if you highly filter it, that might be the only thing you're not getting a bunch of additional stuff. But then you run into the catch-22 of, well, you're going to have to get all those other things you're not getting from water via food, which also has all these contaminants and heavy metals in it, that you can't avoid ingesting no matter what you do. You can just reduce the amounts, that's basically the best you can do. But then you have to make sure you get those minerals in you. If all you're drinking is highly filtered water, you are eventually going to have to get it via spring water that has minerals combined and mixed in with it, or you're going to have to get it from foods, but you're still going to be ingesting the shit into your system from food, from the soil. It's still going to get in you and, be there in your body, because past the formation stage of youth up to adulthood, our protectors, and there's a lot of scientists trying to work this out now, are just gone, and we're basically just gradually decaying from that point on. So it's not like this. It's not this one-to-one. Okay, no fluoride in your body at all ever ingested equals your pineal gland is going to be this much drastically better off, or your body's going to be this much drastic. It's more like, don't overdo it. Don't flood your system with shit tons of fucking fluoride. That's a good idea. But recognize that no matter what you do, you're still ingesting all sorts of heavy metals and crap anyway into your body, especially lead. That's an especially common one in the environment. And all sorts of other crap, right? So it's like, fuck, the soil has all sorts of shit. It gets into plants. It gets into everything. Thus, our bodies have a certain marginal degree of resistance to all this shit. and can chelate out a certain amount of it, we've evolved to be able to do that to a certain extent, just like we've evolved to be able to withstand a certain amount of radiation. For example, the radiation from the sun we're exposed to all day, every day, all the time, which is gradually killing us because it's nuclear radiation. We have sort of a threshold of immunity or resistance to it that doesn't instantly kill us, and we can live quite a decent amount of time without collapsing over and dying. But it eventually catches up very gradually, and all these types of things. So whenever I come across a conspiracy hype narrative, I'm like, okay, let's find the one fact that might be in here that they're basically creating a tangent narrative off of. Let's find what is factual within that. And let's find how did they create this tangent narrative from a fact, right? How did they take one fact and then run with it and create a big vast story out of it? And every time I've done this, I've been able to get the accurate story on like fucking everything. It comes to vaccines, when it comes to fucking like the shape of the earth stuff, when it comes to any scientific thing, evolution, whatever. It's like there's one fact and then they take it and run with it, and it's like, oh fuck, well, there's your problem right there. Like the fucking Chicago World's Fair, right, with the Tartarian civilization thing. One of my friends was linking to me all these videos talking about the Chicago World Fair. Like, that's a big thing they bring up all the fucking time, right? It's like, but when you look up at just a mainstream basic article on the damn thing, one little brief search shows you a lot of things that make total fucking sense. And of course, you can look further into it. There's other sources that confirm it. But like, okay, it was built out of flammable material. It was staffed like a really basic ass, quick to construct material. Basically, it was whitewashed over on the outside with a really quick paste material to cover over the wattle and daub looking inside. So it was highly flammable, this jute staff material. And sure enough, because it was electrically wired to light up the place and make it look really fancy, what happened afterwards was a fire and the whole place burns down. But you just use basic sense, and you're like, well, it's very easy to understand why someone, even if the place was intentionally burned down afterwards, why they would have done that or covered up it, passed it off as an accidental fire. Because if the stuff's already flammable, it's flammable, there's a risk of fire, you can easily be like, set it on fire, whoops, electrical fire, oh crap, and that saves you millions of dollars of having to fucking disassemble the shit and pay everybody to do it. You just burn it up, like, and it's gone, right? So it's like,
and then claim insurance, and you're all Gucci. Yeah,
there you go, claim insurance. It's like, so there's every reason why somebody might have intentionally set that on fire that makes logical sense completely within mainstream narratives, that you don't need any conspiracy at all, and the whole fucking thing makes sense. But they're like, oh no, the Chicago World Fair, they're showing technologies that used to exist, but they wanted to hide and cover up. Therefore, that's why they showed it for 6 to 9 months, when literally everybody knew this was going to be a temporary city setup from 6 to 9 months up to a year. And it was going to be an exhibition, like a prolonged ongoing fair situation, like a really long lasting Renaissance fair, where you set all the buildings up to look really fancy and cool, but they're only there for like a certain amount of time. And then you go behind them and you see what they're built out of, and they're like very flimsy materials and shit, right? But on the other side, they look really fancy and everything else. So that's what was going on. And instead of just being honest with people and acknowledging, hey, there's literally a totally sensible mainstream explanation to what went on here that makes fully legitimate sense, that you wouldn't have any good reason to not accept or believe, because it makes sense, and you can explain it, and you can demonstrate it scientifically, material-wise, and everything else. So why this need for this Tartarian civilization narrative and all this other crap like that? It's unnecessary, and you're just misleading people. So you have all these commenters underneath these videos being like, oh yeah, oh my god, what are they trying to hide? What are they trying to cover up? And well, they're not trying to cover up anything. It's just, it was a fair setup, like you'd set up a fucking Renaissance fair, and it was to host fucking modern technologies and shit. And they just wanted to look really fucking fancy and cool and try out some architectural looking things that were more modern looking and fancier looking than they hadn't done before, to get people's attention. And it worked pretty well. And since then, we've actually had all sorts of new innovations and inventions spurred on from that fair because people were inspired. Nikola Tesla's lighting system and everything. So it's it's just that the Tartarian civilization one is probably the most easy to debunk conspiracies of all of them. It's like, it's funny because the further they go into this, the further the flat earthers hide into the next thing. Most of the flat earthers dodged and hid within the Tartarian civilization thing because it was a convenient way to not admit that they'd made a mistake on the flat circular earth. That's really what it was more than anything else, time frame wise. But even those who accept a globe earth and promote the Tartarian thing, it's still very easy to disprove because it's very easy to uncover and have access to shit tons of fucking physical gigantic skeletons all throughout the world and confirm shit like that. It's not hard, you know? Fuck, you have one stray archaeological site or one place in the world where they uncover a gigantic fucking skeleton, or even a small handful of them anywhere. You can confirm this, like, without any shadow of a doubt, that, okay, this civilization did exist.
Well, a lot of them believe like the dinosaurs are like fake and shit, and like all the like skeletons that like prove evolution. They think that's all fake and all that. So like,
it's such a bullshit narrative.
It's so difficult to like prove those people that it's like real because they just believe everything is just a lie made up by the government. Like no matter how many facts you present to them, they're just gonna tell you that it's like a lie made by the government.
Well, and their whole worldview is it's all fake reality. It's all these layers of reality are fake. So it's like, okay, if your premise is that all of it is fake, you can literally just decide at any point what's fake. At any time, you can just say, okay, my PS4 is fake, the TV's fake, everything's fake, the air's fake, the water's fake. So you see, the problem there is you can't have a discussion on what is real then because everything is fake. Like you can just decide, okay, that's fake, that's fake, that's fake, that's fake. So it doesn't even matter whether something is even historically verified or accurate in archaeological evidence or paleontological evidence, whatever. It's irrelevant to these people because, oh, it's fake. Because reality, it's just a hologram. It's just a simulation. So the entire process of them digging them up and doing everything with them, the whole thing is just a holographic projection. So therefore, it's fake. It's like, and that's what they do. They just go further and further into the it's fake, it's fake, it's fake narrative. So it's like, okay, so literally, technically, everything's fake then. So why are you even talking to me? Why are you even discussing the subject matter? Why not just fucking sit in a room and never say anything ever? It's all fake. It's all fake. It's all fake. If that's what we're dealing with, then why are you speaking? Why are you engaging in this topic? If it's just all fake, 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 right? Like, what's the point? It doesn't make any logistical sense anymore.
It's like the moral anti-realists and the nihilists engaging in like the whole conversation about right and wrong. They're just like, oh yeah, I don't even really care. I just like to tell people that like everything they believe is wrong. Like I just like to tell them that their cousin that got raped, that the rapist actually didn't do anything wrong. It just amuses me. You know, I don't actually have any use for doing this, and I don't actually care. But I just like to ruin people's day.
Basically, yeah. Like those fucking idiots that say, oh, but it's not objectively bad. It's like that motherfucker who was commenting on the in men themselves. It's just subjective. It's like, okay, that's literally motherfucking irrelevant, and you know it because literally every goddamn thing that exists is subjective within sentient reality. The question is it subjective on a large enough, meaningful, significant enough scale to be figuratively classed as objective? That's what we're looking for. And if the answer is yes, then you're just bullshitting, and you know.
Basically, I guess that a universal subjective experience is kind of what we mean by objective. You know, like, we don't actually mean like the universe judges us or something. You know, like because you know how like it's impossible to have like the definition of objective like by a like a standard definition is technically impossible to achieve.
It is impossible, yes.
Because like even if there like the standard thing that it is like, well, what about God? Like you need God for objective morality, prove God exists. But even if you prove God exists, like what does that mean for objective morality? Like, well, because it comes down to either then God defines what is right, so it's a might makes right argument. God's the most mighty, so he defines what's right. Or God knows what's right, and therefore it goes back to it goes back to like something worth discovering. And I guess there is like some weird thing of objectivity, but we can't prove that. So it's like it always comes back to like full circle. Like you can't actually prove. It's not objectivity is like an impossible thing for humans to prove, but we can like understand that like as a concept that universal objective, like universal subjective experiences are like what we mean by objectivity, basically.
Yeah, exactly. And it's like the motherfuckers who do that, they know what they're doing. They're just trying to pass off them trying to do some nefarious, malicious bullshit as not technically actually a bad because it's subjective. So that's why they do that. They know that's why they do it, and they're trolls. So that's why I always love crushing those motherfuckers who try to pull that crap, because what they're trying to do is literally just that. They have some nefarious, nasty fucking thing they're wanting to justify or convince themselves of that it's okay because it's not technically objective. So therefore, it's just all opinions. My opinion of what's good or wrong is it's just an opinion. That's all it is. It's like, okay, that's literally fucking irrelevant. Duh, it's all opinions and subjective. Does it have severe, extreme moral and ethical and physical and emotional implications on other sentiences or not? If the answer is yes, then it doesn't. You can so easily confirm this. It's like, no, you're a bullshitter. You're a troll. Stop it. We know what you're trying to pull here. I could do the same goddamn thing. Like everybody everywhere could do that and just spend all our day saying, but it's not technically like everything that happens. We could literally say it's not objective. It's just subjective. Therefore, it's just subjective. It's just your subjective opinion that it's bad that I punch you in the face. It's just your subjective opinion. It's not objectively bad or wrong that I punched you in the face. It's just your subjectivity process. That's all.
Yeah, man,
So
that's why I always get like really angry. I always get to the point where I'm practically threatening these people because I'm like, here's my fucking address. It's the 962, and then I fucking say the rest of it, and I'm like, you can fucking meet me 54304. That's the area code, you motherfucker. I'm like, if you want to test this, we can see how subjective it is. I bet you, if I get you and I pry your fucking ribcage open and start stabbing you yet, you will fucking admit to me that it fucking objectively sucks. And then they're like, just chill out, man. It's not, you're delving into emotions. And I'm like, of course I'm delving into emotions. You just fucking, it's just like, you're not even playing logically, my $5 equals yours. Your pain's equal to mine. Pain sucks for me. Everybody experiences pain being a sucky, and now you're trying to tell me that ooh, just because it is sucky doesn't mean that I ought to not cause a sucky situation. And I'm like, no, fuck you. If you want to tell me that, here, I want to cause you a fucking sucky situation. How about that? I want to cause you a sucky situation.
And the severeness of the problem is the fact that it is subjectively feelable. So it's like, motherfucker, you and I can both subjectively feel torturous degrees of pain. That's exactly the motherfucking point, bitch. We can feel that shit. Therefore, of course it's fucking subjective. That's why you don't do it to others, because they can subjectively feel it to their own brain and body, you dumb fuck. So it's like, they just don't.
What's your response to the is-ought gap, by the way? I mean, how do you respond to that? Because like
I have, it's a very brief. What you're specifically referring to, I'm like 95% sure I think I know what you're talking about. Could you clarify a little bit more what you mean by your question?
Yeah, like an is-ought gap basically is just a statement like, it's just because something is some way doesn't mean it ought to be that way. So like,
yes, exactly.
Pain is bad, but it doesn't mean we ought to not experience it, basically, is like the whole thing. So it's like, I would basically just do this whole tangent of what I just did, and then they're like, well, yeah, you're right. I mean, it sucks to get raped, and it sucks to get murdered, and if I was being tortured and having you pry my ribcage open and all that, like, that would really suck. But it doesn't mean that you ought not to do it to me. And I'm just like, fucking, let's test this then, you motherfucker. But at the same time, like, it's like, how do you prove that to them with words? Like, if they were in front of you, they wouldn't have the fucking, and if you were like in Antarctica and I had like a fucking machete in one hand and I was just like tapping it against the other mafia style, they wouldn't have the fucking balls to tell me that.
No,
but at the same time,
the thing is, it's situationally inconsistent, and that's what I just crush people with. It's like, okay, what you're saying now is not situationally consistent to you being the one facing it in that situation. Your philosophy would break down in that situation if it was you facing it. Therefore, you're bullshitting. Now, you're not bullshitting if your philosophy is still rock fucking solid in the situation of you being the one directly facing it. If it's the same exact point, you've got a solid point because it's consistent no matter what the situation is. And
Under
so
my
that's
ethics, I can basically prove that like my life has value because I can do anti-natalism, activism, all this stuff, and all these people is just like, no, I just don't want you to kill me. It's just like, okay, cool, wow, great. I can prove why if you were to kill me, it would be beneficial for me. I would be greatly satisfied. I wouldn't be satisfied to be dead, but like the moment before the hatchet enters my neck, I'd be like, you know. But at the same time, like. It's just like I don't fucking get these people, man. Like I can be like my ethics I think are rather consistent. I think your ethics are rather consistent, but these people it's just like
yeah,
it stops at themselves and stops at the people they care for, and it just
that's
goes
about
to
it.
well,
Yep. And then it breaks down into bullshit beyond that, trolling and bullshit, because it's like, all right, there ain't nothing consistent about that particular idea beyond the fucking armchair or beyond you a person saying it in this particular case. As long as there's consistency, it's a solid philosophy, it's a solid stance, it's a solid point. As long as consistency is there, no matter what, no matter what the situation is, no matter what the torturous agony might be, blah 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 blah, whatever. My stance, no matter what the situation is, it just increases the validity. And even though your stance is slightly different from mine on certain conclusions, at least it's consistent. At
I
least it's
think
consistent.
and I think it has to be kind of be consistent, and I'm being more to agree with you these days that it has to be more consistent in like action, also less than just armchair. Because like these fuckers,
Yeah,
they will go to the day they die, being like, yeah, man, if you were to bust into my house and my daughter was there and you're a rapist murderer, like I would be greatly distraughted, but like technically speaking, and like this
yeah,
is like in action, that they would, in action they'd be begging for their daughter's like welfare to the point that they would be willing to put the gun in their own mouth to protect the daughter. But at the
yeah,
same time, like in dialogue, they're just like, I would be, I would be distraught. It's like they're talking about their mom taking away their Xbox or some shit. It's like
yeah.
okay,
It's ridiculous. So it's like, okay, motherfucker, literally, you're just burping out your fucking mouth, and I'm glad you're definitely on board with that because that's a big fucking deal in philosophy. It's like if your philosophy isn't motherfucking solidly consistent as your narrative, as your all your points, all the things you'd bring up in that situation, you don't have a fucking philosophy. You're just a bullshitter. Like, and so you can just immediately call these motherfuckers out because it's like, okay, your philosophy is useless if it's just a conceptual musing, if it's not practically usable in a real world sense, that you can't do something with it, then it's just bullshit. Like, because it's like, you know, I could just say gobbledygook, and then, in a real world situation, that doesn't mean anything to anybody. It's not useful. It's not a piece of communication that has any significance to anybody. It's just whatever. It's like it doesn't have significance. That's exactly what they're doing when they're
oh,
suggesting,
100%.
oh,
Like
technically this, technically that, technically this.
it's
It's
like
totally irrelevant.
remember that conversation with Noodles when we were talking about the utilitarian thing and his mom on the track or whatever? And I was just like, okay, everybody in the fucking world being tortured, your mom just being crushed, not even tortured, just being crushed, and you're saying that you would choose your mom. And he's like, yeah, I care and love for my mom. And it's like, okay, let's fucking bet. Now imagine like an actual situation, like a rebel alliance or some shit trying to like fight for freedom, and it's just your mom has just been captured or something. It's like come on, like you're saying you would end an entire revolution, let them be slaves for entire generations just for mommy? Come on, motherfucker. Like
Yeah, that's
it's
not
like
real.
it's like you're saying you have that much disregard for the rest of humanity, yet you're sitting out here bitching at me about a fucking rabbit. Like you're bitching at me about a rabbit, and yet you're willing to say to me, my best friend who got raped and killed herself. You're saying that, yeah, of course, all the torture in the world put in every single person, but your mom, it's worth it. It's worth it. If there was a button that would redo the rape of your friend and then splatter them off a train, mommy not being splattered worth it. And you can't, in your utilitarian mathua, you can't make me admit that mommy not worth it. So it's just like I fucking this armchair bullshit, man. It's like it
It's
gets to me.
ridiculous.
It gets to
It's
me.
tedious. I mean, you know, when it comes down to like the real world nitty gritty of stuff, it's like this is why my philosophy just ever more refines as time goes on because it actually works in whatever situation I'm in. It fucking hones me in. It makes me make the best decisions possible given the circumstances. I get better at shit. I get more precise. I get more exact. I get more calculated. It fucking works. It has real world fucking application. My philosophy.
You've honestly been wearing off me, my dude, because I'm slowly pushing more towards painism rather than negative utilitarianism. Slow. It is wearing
Interesting.
off me.
What
Painism
is
is basically the
paganism?
idea that like I can pull it up actually here. Let me pull up an article. Painism is basically the idea that like it's very similar to utilitarianism, only like the one major difference is like utility is just a numbers game essentially, and which I kind of respect as a psychopath.
Yeah.
But at the same time, painism is basically saying like, no, what matters is the pain of a subjective being and their assessment of the pain. So it's
Yeah.
like, for example, like the best way you can explain this is that you have 10 people in a room, and essentially you could kind of have like a situation where 10 people would feel 1 unit of pain, and you could prevent that. But by preventing the 10 units of pain that for 1 unit each, you cause a person to experience 9 units of pain, which let's say 9 units of pain is like the equivalent of getting like tortured, and 1 unit of pain is like the equivalent of like getting like a pretty bad paper cut or something, you know.
Yeah.
Under classical utilitarianism or negative utilitarianism, you're supposed to prevent the 10 units of pain, meaning the 10 really bad paper cuts over the person one person being tortured because their amount of pain adds up to only 9 instead of like the 10. Obviously, like by torture, it'd be like very like lower like scale of torture if it's like only
Yeah.
9. But like, I mean, and then under painism would say no, like 1 on the scale of thing is like manageable. It's bad, sure, and if you could prevent that, you would have a moral obligation to prevent the 1 unit of pain,
Right.
but it has a cost of being a 9 on a subjective scale, which is not tolerable under for anybody, even for any
Yeah.
portion of time.
That's pretty much exactly what I've been talking about anyway over the years. So I'm glad you're actually adhering to that standard on it because it's definitely a more refined perspective beyond only utilitarianism because yeah, there's more weight and significance to it and it's more logistically practical, let's put it that way, than
Yeah,
negative utilitarianism. So therefore it's more useful
yeah,
on top
basically.
of yeah, being more weight carrying basically in terms of implication.
Like I'm not entirely sure which one's technically right because, but like when I think about it, like from a personal perspective, it's like because it's like I don't know, it's weird because like if it were to be like a very I'm really big into like the numbers thing, so it's just kind of like if it was one person experiencing like a 1 billion on the scale, or just like everybody in the planet, a whole entire planet experiencing like 1,000 on the scale of suffering. Like under painism, you might have to prioritize the person who's like experiencing 1 million, but an entire planet experiencing 1,000 is like vastly more than like, and it's still significantly horrible. So it's like I don't know. For me, it's like I still kind of think the numbers is technically true, but yeah, like from a practicality standpoint, like I think yeah, like I call it's called painism. The person invented it, but I like to call it ruled negative utilitarianism. It's like negative utilitarianism, but like with rules to establish like what's allowed and not allowed.
I would
And
call it anti-painism. It's kind of weird that they call it painism versus anti-painism, but
yeah, I guess it's just like pain is what they care about. I guess in it, so it's like
oh, okay.
painism. Uh,
Well, the way I see it is that yeah, I think obviously, basically negative utilitarianism is useful in the sense of okay, as an overall overarching theme, but when it comes to okay, what can you actually do practically? That's especially where the anti-painism kicks in. Okay, that's what we can do practically, so what do we do with that? Versus hypothetically, technically, this would be better, but what can we actually do though? What actually
yeah,
can we implement in terms of the practical parts of it? That's definitely why that's much better and more refined because you run into the redundancy principle of even if technically something would be better, if it's not doable as a better thing, then you can't do it anyway. So what else do you do? Well, you go the anti-paymist route then. That is what you can do. So yeah, I think it's pretty coherent, pretty solid, and because really all we can get to is things that are ratio-wise in the direction of pleasure maximization and pain minimization. It's like impossible for anything to be completely, entirely, in the practical sense, entirely, completely pain eliminating, and completely, totally pleasure inducing only to like all the way. At least right now, where we're at technologically and otherwise, it's always some combination. So it's pretty much just ratio levels, but yeah, negative utilitarianism combined with anti-painism as emphasis in practical situations is definitely much more refined as a viewpoint. Much more.
Yeah, what got me to the point of going to that view is actually just a thought experiment. I was just kind of like, well, my friend Shamira, the one that took her own life, I was just kind of like, what if I do the vegan thought experiment of just replacing her like an animal, like replacing like a person with an animal in the vegan experiment? What if I just replaced like a classical negative utilitarian dilemma with Shamira, basically? And I was just like basically the negative utilitarian dilemma is always like if you could cause like say a very horrible event like a rape, but you would prevent like 2 rapes or like say like some person from experiencing like extraordinarily and vast amounts of sexual deprivation pain or something like that, like would it be justified? And under negative utilitarianism you'd have to say based on the amount of pain being prevented that it would be. And I was like, okay, but if we substitute Shamira, my best friend, the only person I've ever felt love for, the only person that I feel like generally in this world like truly got me and like understood like what I experienced and stuff, like substitute her in that situation, knowing how much like pain she went through going through rape and all that stuff, like her experience, like is it justified that like given that like, and I'm like, given all people are equal to her in value, would I push the button to allow that to occur if it was her? And I was just like, I don't think I fucking could. But then I was like, but then I'm at the same time I'm like, it's the same thing with like Noodles and his mom though. Like it's just kind of like he couldn't do that, but like what's the correct thing to do is often not what we can do. So it's like I don't fucking know. I still don't know. But I feel like from a purely intellectual perspective, negative utilitarianism technically is true, but from a practicality standpoint of what people ought to do to maximize the greater good, like painism / anti-painism is the way. So
yeah, that's why I say it's always what we can practically do is always my emphasis, because the other stuff is just musings at the end of the day anyway. It's like, okay, what's within the fold of practical doability? That's going to always be my main emphasis, no matter what, because that's what I can actually fucking do. Everything else is just philosophical musings. It's not something I can do though. So that's why I don't ever jive with people who focus more on philosophical musings, because it's just a waste of fucking time. It's like, well, what are you actually doing? What can you actually do? And is that actually happening according to your standards, etc., or not? And so with pleasurism, it's basically like, and I've thought about this a lot recently too. Like this morning when I was waking up, I was like thinking, you know what? Obviously, there's no doubting this, that the ideal would be, if it's possible, to get to a state of total pleasure of various degrees, but no pain at all, where basically the contrast to pleasure is just a baseline neutral state, but no pain though. If it's possible, obviously that would be the ideal, or at least a very baseline degree of pleasure as the worst case scenario. However, if that's for some reason, due to the nature of reality, absolutely impossible to get to that degree of that, I was thinking about it, I was like, you know what? Up to a certain threshold of pain, there's many arguments that can be made that minor degrees of pain that are not anywhere near torturous levels of pain are definitely worth existing or continuing to exist, as long as pleasure is predominantly what's experienced aside from that, basically, in the sense of, as long as there's nothing excruciating in terms of the worst types of pain, it's just basically, I was given the equivalency of, okay, let's say the worst pain possible in a world we were able to manifest was a stubbed toe level of pain, like a majorly stubbed toe, like whoosh, right? Where it's like sore for a certain amount of time and it's like, oh, that hurts. But it's not like, it's not over the top. It's not excruciating. It doesn't keep lingering continually and it doesn't cause permanent damage. So let's say pain that is painful, but does not, number one, does not cause permanent adverse damage. Number two, is never excruciating. And number three is always able to be recovered out of, no matter if or when it's felt. It's always able to be bounced back from, right? Now, a world like that, personally, I consider very much so worth it existing in terms of as long as the pleasure vastly overweighed the pain, and that being the worst case scenario of pain, stubbed toes, basically, levels of pain, you know. But you know what I'm saying? Like, so it's, to me, it's very absurd that someone would say, no, 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 absolutely, that also is not worth it at all. But I'm like, really? Seriously? Like, you mean that there's, you're going to say that if you have an overwhelming abundance of pleasure, a little teeny bit of pain here and there is not worth the overwhelming abundance of pleasure otherwise? Obviously, we don't exist in that kind of a world now. It's quite the opposite. But if we did, I think pretty much everybody practically everywhere that existed would conclude, yeah, it is worth it though. Even though the ideal is better than that, it's still worth it because at least we have predominant pleasure and we're not actually suffering extreme. Because really, when it comes down to it, really the issue is excruciating pain that's prolonged, that lasts, that has permanent damaging effects, that lingers. It's not baseline degrees of pain that don't last or linger, that go away over a certain amount of time, usually pretty quickly.
I think that's a disagreement, a major disagreement that we have is, for me, baseline pains and just baseline discomforts, like even like the like itches on our body that we have, and just like desire to like rub my eye right now, stuff like that is like enough to me to be like, nah, it's just not worth it, you know?
Are you serious? Like, that's, to me, that's so fucking bizarre though. It's like, so like, okay, let's say you have sex and you experience like a gazillion orgasms for 1,000 years straight, and then you have like one day where you stub your toe, and then you fucking have itchy like mosquito bites all over for like a day after 1,000 years of fucking pleasure. Like, come on, man, you're gonna tell me that that's not worth the fucking mosquito bites or a stub toe? That's really dumb, dude. Come on.
Hey man,
that's kind of bullshit.
I've raw dogged a hoe before and a couple times, and it honestly, sex isn't that great. So I'm like, I mean, it's okay, but like, when it comes down to like the most height experience I've had in my life is probably like being in Hawaii with my friends and stuff like that. And if it came down to it, like if there was a button to like manifest me creating a world where it would be a trade-off of like somebody who gets to experience that, I wouldn't push the button. It's just like, I mean, sure, that's creating a life, so you could say like that's different than like a life already existing. Like, but for me myself, it's like, I mean, yeah, if it was a trade-off of me existing in reality, I would take a stub toe to go to Hawaii right now. But that's me existing, like,
no, that's what I'm talking about. I'm talking about in the practical sense, if you exist. I'm not talking about in the strictly Newton philosophical sense. I'm talking about in the practical sense, like realistically. Like, let's talk real talk right now. Like, you're seriously telling me, okay, take your preferred versions of pleasure. Let's put it that way. Okay, well, even if it's not directly orgasm in particular, whatever version of pleasure you like the most or whatever. Okay, you have that for 1,000 years straight, and then you have one day of like mosquito bites all over your body that itch really bad, and like a stub toe that's really fucking sore all day. After 1,000 years, and then you have like another 1,000 years of that, you know, and then another stub toe and mosquito bites. It's like, come on, man. Like, it's obviously like not
like if it happened, if it's like, here's the thing, if it happened, I'd say it's worth it. Like, if once it happens, and I'm like, yeah, I guess like that was a pretty good experience overall, I'd
that's
say.
what I'm saying. In the practical sense, not in the musing philosophical.
That's just like, that's from like the overall whole, but like, given I'm an identity nihilist and stuff, like if someone laid that out to me and they're like, yeah, if you push this button right now, that's how it's gonna play out for you right now. But if you don't push the button, you just vanish. I would be like, oh fuck yeah, I gotta vanish. I'd be like, you'd be like, wait, no, Brand, you hear me out though. Like,
Hear me out there.
Because if you push the button instead of vanishing, you immediately just start orgasming. You feel good. You don't even complain about it. You don't even have the concept of complaining about it. And like all that happens is just like you get a little itch and like stub your toe, man. Like that's the trade off at the very end. And then you vanish. Like fuck, if you want to have the stub toe in the beginning or like in the middle, like we can arrange something, you know? I'd be like, I'd still just be like, yeah, but like if I vanish right now, like I just don't miss out on any of that. So, you know, including the stub toe, like that stub toe sounds pretty unpleasant, you know, like like that's pretty much my mindset. It's just like I'm not missing out on anything
So
by not
let's put it this
experiencing it.
way. Let's put it this way. If even though that would be your decision yourself for your own situation, would you consider it still worth that for others who deemed it worth it? Like in the sense of, would you consider it um, as a world to be highly subjectively, close to objectively, actually worth it? If
See,
other sentiences determined that, hey, yes, that is worth it, where they had like an option of buttons. Okay,
here's the
here's
thing,
one
like
button,
I think
minimal.
experiencing it and finding it desirable is logic. It makes sense to me. Like if once you experience it, the whole thing, I feel like being like, yeah, that's okay. You know, I feel like that makes sense to me. But like
Yeah,
having it all laid out in front of you and then having like being like, oh, okay, now I'm gonna make the decision. I feel like that just doesn't make sense to me. Like I wouldn't take the deal, but if the deal was thrust upon me, I wouldn't complain, basically.
sure. So basically, in other words, you do consider it worth it, philosophically and otherwise.
I
Worth it in the sense
don't
of,
consider it. I consider like if that situation was chucked onto you, like it was just like I wouldn't complain. I'd be like, okay, I guess, and whatever. But
so
like
like
because
this
it's
from the
just
perspective of,
so
okay,
minimal of a pain compared to like
you have
the
two
hyper
options.
pleasure.
Two options. You have the option of, okay, let's say
It's
it's
because I
like,
understand how people's minds work. I understand that like most people don't care about a stub toe and an itch. So most people, including myself, would take an orgasm. Like I would drive 30, 40 minutes, an hour even, to get laid of some like a hot babe, which is way worse. The driving, the risk of an accident, all that is way worse than this little scratch. So it's like pra- practically, practically, I would do it. Everybody else probably would do it who's like not asexual, you know. So it practically yes, but if I was just like not being like big horny and I was just like sitting there like in a room just like someone's like slapped me across the face and threw a bucket of cold water and he's like you horny fuck, sober up for a moment and think, I'd be like, yeah, it's not worth it.
oh my god, dude, that's so fucking funny, man. Yeah, no. I just love how easily you descend into like immediately. No, it's not worth it. There's like one instance like that. Just no, it's not worth it anymore. Whereas me, I'm just like, fuck yeah, it's worth it as long as it's nothing excruciating and then I can like recover from it afterwards. Like as long as it's predominantly insanely fucking pleasurable for a long ass goddamn time. Yeah, I'm all for it. You know, it's like that's how I see it, and it's like okay, it's there's no that's way better in my opinion than just not existing. Like way better in the sense of being vanished. Because in the argument of being vanished or as close to vanished as possible, non-sentient for as long as possible or whatever, you basically have the scenario of it always comes back to the fact that it's a redundancy principle because it ends up being irrelevant how long you're not sentient because at any time, if and when sentience is sentient again, boom, there it is again. It's just the redundancy of the non-sentient state is it can't be bypassed. Basically, it's like it's the fact that it is a redundancy thing that for me it's not practically useful for anything. You know, in the sense of even if I somehow was disappeared or whatever from this brain and body, if I was like in a miserable state or something, it's not really logistically doing anything. It's just a redundancy because when sentience is sentient again, there it is sentient again. It's not even as if there's no gap in time whatsoever at all.
Yeah,
Period.
but the new form that it might take won't, like the new arrangement of atoms may not be suffering as intensely as like the suffering that you took place in that
Sure.
other form.
Well, the thing is but that's the point. It's going to be something other than sentient. It's not going to be a disappeared thing. So the point I feel remains the same even then because not the disappeared thing that is the thing that's happening. It's another sentient thing going on that's pleasured more, which is great. But the thing is, like, the disappeared state, it isn't like sleeping. It's different from sleeping, basically. Sleeping is like, I think that's a very wrong correlation a lot of people seem to put to not existence or not existing. They wrongly correlate it with deep sleep. But to me, there's so many erroneous things connected to that because obviously with deep sleep, you do for sure wake up. If it's just deep sleep and you don't die also, you wake up in the same body, in the same form, and it's a guaranteed resentient bounce back state. So it can't really accurately be compared to not existing, being not existed, because in a non-existent thing, you don't bounce back to that exact form or exact state. It's just going to be a different state of sentience of some other variation. Unless, so we're dealing with some weird soul trap and you're just re-forced into the same shit over and over again. Let's hope that's not the fucking case. It probably isn't. But, in the more realistic scenario where it's just, okay, sentience here, sentience here, sentience here, well, since that's all that's going to be going on anyway, even if I were to, have to remove myself from the state, my psychology would be exactly that. It's like, okay, I would specifically have to analyze it that way. Is it worth me risking what might happen to at least ensure that I'm not tortured in this current state? At least, right? So is my assurance that I'm not tortured in this state worth risking something else via all these other possible sentient states, via generic subjective continuities, other things that are going to be happening with sentience versus this? Is it worth it? Right? And to me, the threshold is yes, it's worth it if, number one, there's a high, extreme fucking likelihood that I'm about to be tortured to death. That's an overwhelmingly high likelihood that I can predict to some extent. Then yeah, exiting at that point makes sense. If I'm already in a state of being extremely tortured, torturous degrees of pain, excruciating pain, and it's chronic, there's another reason to exit as quick as possible because it is worth it. It's like, well, I'm already being excruciatingly tortured to the worst degree now, so I really don't have anything to lose by exiting this tortured state. I mean, even if it is a worse tortured state, well, at least I know that it's just a continuation more or less of what's already happening. So see, you're not really risking anything at that point because you don't have anything left to lose anymore, right? You're just at least attempting to exit a horribly tortured state and seeing what happens, basically. Whereas in the case of if it's just, okay, I feel depressed or I feel here and there periodically, suicidal ideation pop in here and there, to me personally, even if I were to feel or experience those things, it wouldn't be anywhere near worth actually following through on it or actually doing it because it's not to the degree that the risk is worth it yet, basically, at those points. It would be worth it if it was extremely chronic and extremely awful all the time and always pumping in my face, but having waves of it or something come over me, definitely not worth it.
I mean, can you explain what you mean by risk? Because to me, it's just I mean, I get you mean there's a chance that you'd physically come back in some of reincarnation sense potentially, or the principle where you just kind of get bodies trapped, or whatever. But that seems so unlikely to me, given the physical universe, that it's more likely you're just gonna have your atoms and the energy that makes up your mind arranged in different ways, and you're just not gonna be you. It's the same as constantly our atoms are constantly being cycled out of our bodies and stuff. So it's to me, I don't know. It just doesn't really seem that much of a risk. It's just kind of exiting one physical form and whatever, I guess.
Well, yeah, that's what I'm saying. Each person has to decide what they consider to be a risk or not for themselves, really. So yeah, if you don't yourself deem it to be that much of a risk, then in your case it would be worth it, I guess, if it's not a concern about the risk. In my case, it's not worth it because I have a glaring sense and feeling and sensation of risk being there. So that's my main, among many other reasons, why I don't have an inclination towards it. Because then it's the redundancy principle. If it's well, at least here I can operate within some parameters of knowing what my parameters are and being able to at least have some degree of marginal, reasonable certainty of how my overarching life is going to keep playing out, minus some freak situations. So, yeah, it's like it's worth continuing to doing the living thing versus the not living thing for that and many other reasons, because the overarching theme is something that I actually have within parameters of my sense of control. Whether the control is actually happening or not is irrelevant. And I actually basically experience quite a good amount of pleasure within that fold. So therefore, let's keep rocking with it. If it's not broke, don't fix it, right? Or if it's gradually breaking down anyway, well, it's going to gradually break down anyway. Why speed up or rush the process? That's part of my philosophy. And obviously, I'm attempting to not let it rust away or wear down. That's why I'm all for transhumanist stuff. So that's the other part of it. But it's like, I look at things from the perspective of, okay, what situation do I know for sure that I have marginally more control over to some extent? Well, for certain, this state versus whatever might happen after death, for sure. This state right now, I definitely have far more marginal control over what happens, how things play out. Like, for example, tomorrow, I can reasonably have confidence that more than likely tomorrow I will wake up and I won't be, cast into a dungeon and tortured to death. Realistically, right? Can it happen? Sure. Is it possible? Yes. Is it highly unlikely? Yes. So I have at least that marginal degree of awareness or some degree of sense of control and ability to develop things here, whereas it just isn't there when it comes to death or disappearing or the after death state. And the fact that, for me personally, I'm not attracted to those states. I don't find them at all whatsoever. Hey, that sounds nice or like a good idea or cozy or comfy that feels like a good thing. It just isn't there for me. Like, there's nothing about disappearing or death that it feels good about it. Just like I don't trust a plane that it's going to be able to stay in the air. Like, I've done multiple different plane flights, and I never really get used to it because I'm not like panicking or anything. I don't trust that the plane won't crash. It's not so much that I'm afraid or scared, like, oh, I'm afraid. It's more like I legit just don't trust the fucking thing staying up in the air. I just don't. It's kind of like I don't fucking trust a floor that I know has like cracks and holes and shit in it to like hold my weight. It's like I'm not scared to walk on the floor. I just don't trust that it will hold up. It's more like, for me, a logistical calculation. If it's not likely to hold up, it's just dumb as fuck to risk myself getting pained by walking on the damn thing. It's just stupid. It's the kind of like with plane flights. If I can avoid it, to me, it's just dumb to take the plane flight if I don't absolutely have to, because, for all those reasons. And same thing with like a lot of other different things in life. So I heard this theory about, you're familiar with terror management theory, right?
Yeah.
With that? And I think a more accurate wording of that would be a more accurate version of the concept would be uncertainty management theory, or uncertainty regarding torture management theory versus terror management theory. Because it's not that people are afraid of death. It's that mostly people don't trust death more so than being afraid of it. That's basically what I've noticed in my life. It's like, I'm not like scared, oh my God, I'm so scared to die. It's more just like, I just don't fucking trust what happens afterwards. Obviously I have certain desires and likes and wants, but not trusting something is different from being afraid of it, though. That's why I think him calling it terror management theory isn't really as accurate as it could be. And I still need to actually read through his stuff, and I will. But I told this to this other friend of mine. He's like, hey, how about you read through it before you actually comment on it? But I already know before even reading it that my stance is still going to be the same. It's so obvious to me that it's uncertainty that it's a non-trust factor versus a terror factor, right? Now, not to say that people in certain circumstances won't be terrified, like, for example, but they're terrified of something other than the death itself. They're terrified of, for example, in war, the pain of the blade slicing into their neck. They're terrified of the pain of being tortured. They're terrified of the pain itself. They're not terrified of death itself. That's not what makes them scared. Death is just the distrust part. Okay, I don't trust that part, but the pain possibility is what scares people. It's not death itself that scares them. So him calling it terror management theory, I think it could be much better if he just named it a little differently, and he could garner a much wider audience for it. That is, if he just called it uncertainty management theory, etc. I think it'd be far more accurate than terror, because it's like terror is only held within people who have very specific paranoid type beliefs in relationship to death. But most people aren't terrified of it. They're just, like what I said, they're just distrusting of it. Because people have asked me that before. They're like, well, so do you fear this? Or I think you do fear death. I think this is a fear of yours. It's like, no, that's not it. It's like, do you fear, it's a good example of this. Do you fear disappearing from sentience? Absolutely not. Of course not. Do you realistically likely fear agonizing pain that you'll feel before or as that's happening? Of course. Right? Obviously, you're not going to be gung-ho or not afraid of having an excruciating degree of agonizing pain before you die happening. So it's not the death that you're afraid of at all. It's, especially in your case, it's strictly pain associated with it that people don't want to have to deal with. So I think when I told the guy that, I think he missed that point, that the point is still solid, whether I've read the book or not. That's kind of irrelevant, because it's going to be the same point either way, So
Yeah.
What do you think about that? Anyway.
I mean, terror management theory is really interesting. Does it mainly have to do with religion for the most part, or?
It basically has to. But it's not only religion; it has to do with the vast majority of human behaviors as a whole. And there's actually a lot of evidence behind what he's suggesting, even though what he's actually suggesting is uncertainty management theory. But basically, the premise, from what I understand, and I watched a little bit of an interview with the guy, him talking about it. And he was able to confirm a lot of his hypotheses. He was describing a lot of historical, cultural things, but especially religion. Probably religion more than anything else was specifically, mainly designed as a terror management thing. Or basically, rather, an uncertainty management related to the terror of the pain of death, or the pain that might follow death, or the pain of having to die, etc. Basically, every emotional or mental or whatever agony you feel in relationship to contemplating the requirement of having to feel pain before you die, or have to be imposed into a world where you're also going to die, whatever variation of that goes on.
Existential dread type of
stuff.
Yeah,
existential dread, basically. That's basically the main driving force in the subconscious of all humans everywhere, no matter what their culture is, no matter what their ideologies are, no matter what the teachings are. But especially in religion and the monotheistic religions, it's literally the textbook for terror management theory, in the sense of the whole thing is about that. It's the whole thing is a continual management of the terror, the uncertainty of death, and what's connected and associated around death, like pain, suffering before death, etc. And it's this constant urge of people to avoid those things obsessively. That is what drives religion, religious views. Belief in a soul, belief in a positive afterlife, belief that things are going to work out better in the end. Hell, even things like the Celtic warriors being really crazed before combat and battle, yelling and shouting, and the getting themselves worked up, ready to die, like the samurai getting themselves worked up, ready to face death and everything. Even those things are demonstrably variations of the terror management thing, because they're managing it by working themselves up into a frenzy to basically distract themselves from the horror of it, more or less, right? So it's
basically just a theory saying that everything in society that we consider pleasurable and good, or is just kind of a coping mechanism to distract us from these existential dreads that we inevitably face.
Basically, yeah, that's more or less what it is. But it's more, his emphasis in it is the fact that it's worse in religion, and it's worse in religious narratives than in non-religious narratives or whatever, because in religious narratives you have all these additional fears and all these additional pains added on top of pains that we know for a fact already exist. So instead of just dealing with strictly existential dread relating to things that factually already we know exist. It's existential dread added with things that may not exist at all on top of what we do know exists. So it like in this weird conundrum, in their attempts to like avoid it, they actually make it worse and agitate the terror more by being religious. They like make it worse emotionally and mentally by having that concern versus the secularist who only is concerned with what is known to be pain-inducing things. That's about it, right? So, and isn't overly paranoid about uncertainty or anything like this. Whereas the religious person is heavily so. And so he especially showed that this is how cults operate. They hone in on this terror management thing going on, and that combined with the fact that they hone in on people who already guilt trip themselves as their main victims. You know, these two things. And he was, so this one guy that I was talking to, Gora Raider, he was talking about how the Hare Krishna cult is, the whole thing is just terror management theory, because it's talking about, okay, you have a transcendental existence beyond the body and brain, beyond the body and mind, an eternal form, eternal personality you're going to get back to beyond this. But the caveat is it requires you to die to get back to that, though. That's the dark, horrific, awful caveat. It requires your brain and body to die first in order for that to happen. You can't just whisk to that state and be there. And so that's basically the horror and the terror. It's not something you can access without dying first. And so that it creates this weird, bizarre paranoia in people's consciousness that, oh my God, I've got to ensure my eternal form. I got to ensure that I go back to my eternal form. I've got to ensure that when I leave this body, that's specifically what I'm meditating on, or else, basically. And this or else principle is exactly what's driving all their paranoia and their cultism and stuff. It's like, you must think and feel and experience this or else all the time, right? And the or else is always the looming death at any time hanging over their heads. And it's very traumatizing to people to have this additional narrative of, here's all these extra things you need to be concerned about now. Here's all these extra uncertainties that you now need to be more uncertain about than just the uncertainty of, you know, the baseline uncertainty of, well, we're not 100% sure what happens at death, really, and we really can't be. Now you got all these additional things. Well, you need to absolutely make sure you meditate on this, and you can't slack on that. You need to make sure you're absorbed in this particular thought and this feeling by the time of death. You can't slack on that either. You know, it's like this. It creates all these dire implications beyond just death itself that the person is now paranoid about. That literally the only effect it has is the person just has worse mental and emotional trauma than they would otherwise. It literally doesn't change anything in a beneficial way in regards to how they live their lives or go about things. It adds to their fucking paranoia and trauma about what could happen if they don't, basically, this or that or the other. So it creates a prison in their own fucking mind, basically, that mind fucks people. But yeah, I thought that was really intriguing. So I'm definitely going to look at his book and read it over. See what he actually...
the Conspiracy Against the Human Race, is it? Or
Conspiracy Against the Human Race. I'll have to look up this guy. I'm pretty sure this guy was more like of a scientific leaning minded dude.
Okay.
But I'll have to... I think that was a different person, the conspiracy thing. Because his narrative isn't conspiratorial at all. It's a scientific one. Yeah. But it's got a lot of evidence, because what fascinates me about it, you can explain all the different religious narratives like across the board throughout the world, and you can like pinpoint which aspect of terror management theory they're focused on. Like, it's like, holy shit, there it is again. There it is again. There it is again. Like Christianity, Judaism, Islam. You can just pinpoint, there's terror management theory right there. That's literally their doctrine. Like, there's the cope management theory. That's it. That's what their religion is, for fuck's sake. And so it completely blows this lid on what the other little teachings are, little tidbit things they teach within the teachings, because you can't shake recognizing that what it is terror management there. It's just terror management. That's just their version of terror management. That's all that's going on here. There's nothing special or unique about it, really. It's just another variation of it, you know? So you look at that and you're like, yeah, that's just insanely fucked up. That, like, no matter where you go in the world, no matter what you do, it's just some variation of that bullshit. So all the more reason why people shouldn't be religious and should only be secular and shouldn't claim anything without solid evidence, because, you know, if you can verify immediately that something is terror management going on and that it's a terror management doctrine, well, you've got every reason not to take to the thing, because it's going to be able to do is fuck around with your mental and emotional health more than it is fucked with now. That's about it. You're not going to get any benefit out of the damn thing.
Oh, I just realized it's 1:11 in the morning, so I'm actually gonna. Yeah, for me it is.
All right, man. Well, it was good talking to you.
Yeah, it was awesome talking to you, dude. Take care.
Have a good one, dude.
Ciao. Oh man.